Chapter 902. Brother Yi Tianxi. The door of the palace opened, and Yi Lan, Chen Hao, and a sleepy Long Ting walked out together. Outside the door, Chen Wuliang, Han Mei, Shui Mei, and everyone else had been waiting. Chen Wuliang instantly released an extremely powerful divine sense and locked onto Chen Hao. What a pity! What a pity! The time is too short. Too short. Carefully sensing Chen Hao's aura, Chen Wuliang frowned slightly. Just as he was about to ask, Yi Lan shook his head regretfully and said, This caused the hearts of the crowd, which were already worried about Chen Hao, to become even heavier. Yes, 2 days. Although Chen Wuliang had told everyone that Yi Lan would definitely condense an independent space of space-time law, the time was still too short. No matter how strong Yi Lan was, and no matter how high Chen Hao's comprehension was, how much improvement could they make? Amazing, how is really amazing. To the crowd's surprise and bafflement, Yi Lan said such a thing again. What did this mean? Brother, don't worry too much. How is stronger than I thought. Although it's only been 2 days, I believe that the situation is definitely much better than 2 days ago. Brother, is it true? I sense no change. Chen Wuliang said doubtfully, You said the time was short, and now you're saying this again. Don't comfort me. I want to know the real situation so that I can prepare in advance. Otherwise, it'll be a life and death struggle. Chen Wuliang's eyes suddenly surged with a terrifying light. Obviously, he had already made up his mind. Don't act recklessly. Brother, you're the ruler of the vast universe galaxy. Don't you know what a life and death struggle means? I said the time was short because the mental cultivation method I taught how could be interpreted by him with Dao sounds, and it gave me new insights. Father, mother, you don't have to worry. A while ago, I had a feeling that this should be a great tribulation that I must overcome. No matter what happens, I'll definitely return alive. Chen Hao's expression was extremely calm as he spoke frankly. By now, his keen intuition had become increasingly aware of the aura of danger. Add that to the fact that he had been in a daze that night, and despite his confidence, Chen Hao still had the feeling that this great tribulation would descend upon him. I believe in you. Let's go, it's almost time. Brother, don't be impulsive. I'll hide in the shadows for now. It's time. In the void, the pure land condensed by the Xiao family ancestors suddenly collapsed. Xiao Yan took a single step forward and appeared in the skies above East City. In the central plaza of the East Flow City Alliance, countless cultivators had gathered. Immortal light flickered, and each of them was an old man with a sage-like demeanor. Up and down, left and right, they were densely packed in all directions. All of them were cultivators above the heavenly celestial stage. Moreover, those who were qualified to come in and watch either had a powerful background or were experts with astonishing combat strength. And this was only on the surface. Among them, there were over 10,000 Hongmeng Supremes. All of them had crystal lights shooting out from between their eyebrows. It was clear that the great mind worlds of Supremes Hongmeng were connected to the outside world. Their great mind worlds were naturally filled with juniors and cultivators from their sections. Just how many people could spectate? It was impossible to estimate. Even the protective barriers of the Alliance had been completely opened. The void outside the Alliance's central square was also filled with cultivators. Although this was only a battle between the heavenly immortal realm Xiao Yan and Chen Hao, it was possible that heavenly retribution would be triggered midway and evolve into a battle between Daoist Jingxian. But, without a doubt, this was destined to be a sensational battle that hadn't occurred in vast universe galaxy for the last 10 billion years or even 100 billion years. This was because of Xiao Yan and Chen Hao's identities. One was the #1 genius of vast universe galaxy's #1 family that had stood tall for 1 trillion years, an existence that had obtained the 9-life inheritance of the Xiao family ancestor. The other was an unprecedented genius of vast universe galaxy, Yi Xian, the son of vast universe galaxy's ruler, Chen Wuliang. The previous battle between Chen Wuliang and the Xiao family ancestor allowed everyone to understand that one of these two was destined to stand at the peak of vast universe galaxy. How could this not be sensational? The Xiao family's 11 true immortals had already arrived at the central square. They sat like boulders, their eyes shining with a cold light. Together with them were over 100 Hongmeng Supremes of the Xiao family, as well as the high-level figures of the Wan family, Bai family, and other powerful families. There was also the Valley Master of Happy Valley, who was trembling with fear and apprehension. Now that things had developed to this point, the ant-like existence of Happy Valley was no longer in control. Whether they won or lost, their future days would be miserable. But now, they could only endure and continue to cooperate. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how they died. The Wuji star was a weak planet. Although it was still weak, compared to before, its fame could be said to have shaken the entire vast universe galaxy. Even many of the alien races knew about the existence of the Wuji star because of killing god Qianhao. Now, they even learned that the last life of Qin Wuliang's 100 reincarnations, which was also the life where he broke through, was on the Wuji star. Furthermore, the Wuji star was different from the unstable Happy Valley. The Happy Valley was merely a tool for the Xiao clan to use. There was no affection to speak of. On the other hand, the Wuji star was an existence that Qin Wuliang and Qianhao had to protect. There was no such thing as burning the bridge after crossing the river and not caring about it. At this time, there were only 5 people from the Wuji star. Qianhao's eldest senior brother, second senior brother, Heavenly Venerable Yuanru, Lu Qingyang, and Guan Nanchao, whom Qianhao hadn't seen yet, and whom Qianhao owed a great debt of gratitude. They couldn't be compared to the Xiao family at all. It could be said that any expert from the Xiao family could kill the 5 of them. At this moment, the 5 of them were worried because they knew that the chances of Qianhao winning this battle could be said to be close to 0. Buzz. Suddenly, heaven and earth shook, and a terrifying pressure poured down from the 9 heavens. The void cracked open, and lingering celestial light and endless Tao laws spewed out. An old man and a young man stepped on the void and arrived. They're here. The Xiao family's patriarch and Xiao Yan. At this moment, everyone looked up at the void and looked up at one of the main characters of today's battle, the undying old monster who had existed for hundreds of millions of years, and one of the strongest experts in the vast universe galaxy. Greetings, patriarch, patriarch. The members of the Xiao family immediately bowed, and their voices resounded through the 9 heavens. Even they didn't know that the current Xiao Yan was no longer the Xiao Yan of the past. The old man and the young man could be said to be the 2 most dazzling existences in the Xiao family, but there was only one person, the Xiao family's patriarch. Xiao Yan will win. Xiao Yan will win. At the same time, the cultivators who were destined to be on the same boat as the Xiao family, as well as Xiao Yan's followers and admirers, all let out loud cheers. At this moment, a cold snort pierced through the sky. Chapter 903. Space trembled and ripples appeared. Qin Wuliang, Han Mei, Shui Mei, Qianhao, a bare-chested old man who was 4 to 5 times the size of an ordinary person, and hundreds of Hongmeng Supremes slowly descended from the void to the side of the 5 from Limitless Star. Greetings, Overseer. The sound waves instantly filled the world, drowning out all other shouts. This time, all the cultivators who appeared here, except for those from the Xiao family and those who were loyal to the Xiao family, had no choice but to pay their respects to Qin Wuliang, the current overseer. God of Slaughter Qianhao. God of Slaughter Qianhao. After a brief moment of silence, a sea of shouts erupted. The glabella of some of the Hongmeng Supremes instantly shone 1,000 times brighter. No one had expected, not even Qianhao himself, that his prestige among the young cultivators of vast universe galaxy would rise to such a high level. A terrifying momentum instantly caused Qianhao to boil. The hearts of the people, the momentum of the people, the destiny. Qianhao was shocked. He could clearly sense a mysterious aura that was 1,000 times stronger than ever before. It was not power, but it could allow him to erupt with even greater power. Celestial Lord Yuanru, who had been under house arrest for 10 years, stared at Qianhao with an excited expression. Even though he had long believed that Qianhao had a bright future ahead of him, he had never imagined that in just 10 short years, Qianhao would appear before him again, an existence who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Of course, this was only in terms of cultivation level. In terms of true battle prowess, Celestial Lord Yuanru knew that he was no match for Chen Hao. Senior brother. Chen Hao stepped in front of Heavenly Venerate Yuanru and gripped his hand tightly. Junior brother, I've implicated you, junior brother, how can you say that? In these 10 years, senior brother has not suffered at all, only gained. Junior apprentice brother. Senior apprentice brother, let's have a good chat after you win the battle. Empyrean Yuanru said with a solemn expression. He was very touched that Chen Hao would talk to him at this time. Although he had a lot to say, he knew that now was not the time. He also knew that this battle was unavoidable, and Chen Hao's chances of winning were very, very low. He could not distract Chen Hao at this time. Chen Hao nodded. He abruptly turned around and looked in the direction of the Shao clan with eyes as sharp as swords. Xiao Yan. This was the first time that Chen Hao had seen Xiao Yan's real body up close. At this moment, Xiao Yan, who had arrived before him, sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed. Facing the roaring cheers, his expression was calm and composed, as if he didn't care about the upcoming battle at all. That was the confidence of the strong, absolute confidence, the confidence that was built on top of powerful strength. Very strong, Chen Hao thought as he sensed Xiao Yan's aura with his sharp gaze and monstrous senses. In my current state, in terms of absolute strength, I'm probably only at 60% of his. After unsealing myself as a transcendent mortal, I might be able to match him or even surpass him. Chen Hao couldn't be certain. Xiao Yan was the #1 genius of the Shao clan, and his talent couldn't be much lower than his. Even if Chen Hao was stronger than the other party in terms of absolute strength, it wouldn't be by much. And this was under the assumption that Chen Hao would reach heavenly immortal consummation after unsealing himself as a transcendent mortal. Since we're already here, what are we waiting for? At this moment, the old ancestor of the Shao clan suddenly spoke up. His voice wasn't loud, but it drowned out the roaring cheers in the air. Everyone could hear his words clearly. Following which, the crowd fell silent. In the mind of the Poison King Valley head, Du Jing, Coiled Dragon, Lan Feng, Chen Shui, Chen Nan, Xiao Mei, Huyan Aobua, Hu Mainyang, Bailey Ningbing, and Chen Shaoqing, who had walked out of Chen Hao's mind, all fell silent. Through their spiritual perception, they stared at Chen Hao anxiously. Standing beside him was a bare-chested old man who was several times taller than an ordinary person. His bell-like eyes were emitting a ferocious aura. He was the head of the Manhuang tribe, the old ancestor of the Coiled Dragon tribe. There were no cultivators in the world of his mind because he had already chosen to fight side by side with Chen Wuyang without hesitation and with a sense of righteousness as high as the clouds. Even though he knew that the chances of Chen Wuyang and the old ancestor of the Shao clan fighting were close to zero, he still had to be prepared. He was only at Jizuan realm pinnacle in Hongmeng, but the barbarian god art of the Manhuang tribe's bloodline allowed him to exert the might of a true immortal. Xiao Yan opened his eyes and took a step forward. He arrived at the high platform at the center of the square and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at Chen Hao from afar and said calmly, "Killer God Chen Hao, you can come and meet your death now." His calm voice contained absolute confidence and arrogance. The aura around him did not fluctuate at all, which showed his contempt for Chen Hao. It gave people the feeling that Chen Hao could not pique his interest at all. How arrogant! Yes, although Killer God Chen Hao has not reached the full circle of the heavenly immortal realm, how terrifying is his combat strength. His talent is even stronger than Xiao Yan's. Xiao Yan is obviously looking down on him. You are wrong. Xiao Yan may look calm, and there is not even a surge in his fighting spirit. However, don't you realize that he looks even more invulnerable and as steady as a mountain just by standing there? This is definitely not looking down on him. It is just a superficial provocation. If he unleashes his aura right away, he will be at a disadvantage. That makes sense. I feel like Xiao Yan has transformed. He is even stronger than before. How is that possible? Xiao Yan has reached the full circle of the heavenly immortal realm long ago. Unless he triggers the heavenly punishment, it is impossible for him to become stronger. I can feel that he is suppressing his aura now. Once the battle starts and he triggers the heavenly punishment, it will not be against the rules. I find it strange too, but the feeling he gives me is indeed more terrifying. We are very familiar with him, and this feeling is definitely not wrong. I think the Shao clan's patriarch must have taught him some heaven-defying ultimate technique in the past 2 days. This Chen Hao also gives me a very dangerous feeling. He is definitely not inferior to Xiao Yan. A one-sided situation will definitely not happen. Whether it was in the square or outside the square, or the cultivators in the great worlds in the minds of some Grand Mist Supremacy Realm experts, they were all discussing animatedly at this moment. Some cultivators with strong senses and sharp intuition hit the nail on the head, while others only stopped at the superficial phenomenon. However, at this moment, as Xiao Yan's words were filled with contempt and provocation, they all looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao, who had always been the most composed, made Chen Shui, Hu Meinyang, Pan Long, Du Jing, and the others frowned slightly at this moment. Chen Hao was different from his usual self. He directly unsheathed his sword and walked with it. He did not fly or teleport, but just walked step by step toward Xiao Yan. With every step he took, the aura on his body soared, and the killing intent between his eyebrows turned into a scarlet flame that burned fiercely. The 5-element sword, which had been modified countless times, let out a sword hum under Chen Hao's aura. The sword aura was cold to the bone. Chapter 904. In the boundless universe, there are no restraints. Come and go freely, free and unrestrained. Everything is empty, neither dirty nor clean, neither increasing nor decreasing, neither being created nor being destroyed. No one knew that Chen Hao was reciting scriptures silently at that moment. Xiao Yan's aura, soul and will. The moment Xiao Yan opened his eyes, Chen Hao knew that he had encountered the strongest opponent in his life. Moreover, Xiao Yan's opponent was at the same level as him. Coupled with the great calamity that he sensed, even Chen Hao could not remain calm. Therefore, he could only put his life on the line and disregard everything else. He had to cast aside everything that could affect his mind and disregard his life and death. In a battle, he had to be undistracted, unburdened, and fearless in the face of death. As Chen Hao moved forward step by step, an indomitable aura swept across the area. His killing intent, battle intent, sword intent, essence, qi, and spirit soared like never before. The pressure that was released caused the cultivators present to be horrified. Whether it was Daoist Jingxian, Hongmeng Supreme, or perfected immortals, of course, most Daoist Jingxian were horrified because they could clearly feel that Chen Hao's pressure had a huge impact on them. Even if they were to attack, they would not be a match for Chen Hao. At that moment, Chen Hao was only at the heaven immortal stage and had not yet reached the peak. What kind of heaven-defying talent and combat strength did he have to have such a powerful aura? Among these people, there were some Daoist Jingxian at the peak of the late stage. What a powerful aura! Is this suicidal behavior that has seen through life and death? In the face of absolute combat strength, all your potential is in vain. You are like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Xiao Yan said coldly. However, his calm eyes became fierce and cold. Obviously, he was not as indifferent as he said. Chen Hao's indomitable aura made him feel pressured. Set up the sealing enchantment. Each of us will send 10 Hongmeng Supreme and work together. Chen Wuliang looked at Chen Hao's back, took a deep breath, and said in a low voice. No problem. Chen Wuliang, let me emphasize again. You are responsible for your own life and death in this battle. If you, me, and that old fart dare to interfere, then don't blame me for being unscrupulous. The Shao clan's patriarch said sternly. Cut the crap. The 10 of you, go. Yes. Chi. Following Chen Wuliang's order, 10 Hongmeng Supreme martial artists, who had been prepared beforehand, leaped into the air and occupied half of the void. Almost at the same time, the 10 Hongmeng Supreme martial artists of the Shao clan rose into the air. Buzz, in an instant, 20 Hongmeng Supremes attacked at the same time. Mysterious runes instantly enveloped Chen Hao and Xiao Yan. Absolute space restriction. Unless one of them was dead, Chen Hao and Xiao Yan would not be able to escape even if they wanted to. The 20 Hongmeng supreme martial artists who had set up the restriction were unable to withdraw even if 10 of them wanted to. Only by working together could the seal be undone. This was also a restriction used by the top experts of the vast universe galaxy when they engaged in a life-and-death battle. Of course, if the Shao clan's patriarch and Chen Wuliang wanted to break it open, they would naturally be able to do so. Boom. Within the absolute space restriction, the moment the seal was formed, the heavens and earth suddenly changed. The space that was originally only 10 miles in radius expanded to 10,000 miles in radius in an instant, turning into a huge sealed martial arts arena that was 10,000 miles high and 10,000 miles wide. Outside the seal, the surrounding cultivators could clearly see Chen Hao and Xiao Yan through the mysterious runes. No matter how the two changed their positions, they could not escape the eyes of the crowd. This was also the reason why the seal had been integrated with the divine power law, to allow the people outside to see clearly. Without saying anything, Chen Hao took the lead and thrust his sword forward from 1,000 miles away. A sharp sword hum, sharp killing intent, and majestic true yuan tore through the sky in an instant, like a blood-red rainbow traversing the void. Come! Boom! Xiao Yan's pupils shrank. He opened one of his hands and grasped at the void. The whole space suddenly turned into a void as if the heavens and earth had been sucked into his palm. The heavens and earth are mine, and I am the heavens and earth. The power of the heavens and earth is mine to use. Just as Chen Hao's sword light was about to reach Xiao Yan's fist, which he had been accumulating power for, suddenly blasted out. Boom! The scorching and resplendent light exploded, setting off stormy waves. The terrifying energy fluctuations caused all the spectators to widen their eyes. It was just a tentative first move, but the intensity was beyond everyone's expectations. How terrifying would the real battle be? When faced with the terrifying energy explosion, the god of slaughter Chen Hao's body paused for a moment before he charged forward at high speed once more, and he ceaselessly struck with his sword. Every sword strike contained the light of profound talisman markings, and it exceeded the scope of understanding of an expert at the heavenly immortal realm. It was obviously firm and yang in nature, yet his sword chi was ever-changing, and various sword insights flowed out perfectly like 1,000 waves that overlapped each other. The terrifying slaughter sword insight was the tip of the sword as it cut through all obstacles. So strong. God of slaughter Chen Hao. Looks like we've underestimated his combat strength. To think that he is so monstrous? Every sword contains many Dao laws, one sword of each kind. If he were to simply release any one sword, it wouldn't be shocking. However, he can continuously release them and merge them into a flawless state of perfection. How high does his comprehension of Dao laws have to be able to do this? Heaven Immortal? I'm afraid that even Daoist Jinxian's consummate realm can't do this. Even boss. Just when Xiao Yan's loyal followers saw Chen Hao continuously releasing sword techniques like a river after a sword strike, and were discussing in shock and astonishment, Xiao Yan, who was still standing proudly, had a hint of arrogance on the corner of his mouth. He suddenly punched out continuously, and in an instant, there were layers upon layers of fist shadows. What was even more surprising was that every single one of his punches seemed to correspond to every single one of Chen Hao's sword strikes. Even the Dao law, strength, and fist intent contained within all corresponded to Chen Hao's. Moreover, in terms of absolute strength, they were all slightly stronger than Chen Hao's, no more, no less. Could it be that Boss Xiao has been hiding his true strength? Or is it because the Xiao clan's ancestor helped him improve in these 2 days? Too powerful. The god of slaughter Chen Hao's peerless sharpness just made everyone stare in shock. Then, they were drowned by Xiao Yan's exquisite combat skills and powerful strength. The cultivators who came out of the primitive secret area became extremely nervous at this moment. Whether they had joined Ao Tian, been saved by Ao Tian, or were not related to him, as long as they were not enemies, in their hearts, God of Slaughter Chen Hao had quietly become the spiritual leader that they worshipped. After returning together, these people hoped to see the legend that God of Slaughter Chen Hao created continue to be undefeatable. And the stronger, the better. This would make them even more proud in the future. Chapter 905. But now, Xiaoyan, who was as steady as a mountain, was like an immovable mountain, causing Chen Hao, who had taken the initiative to attack and was filled with a boundless aura of slaughter as if he was going to go all out, to become even more unconfident. Chen Shui, Heli and Wuzi, Hu Meinyang, and Long Ting, the four people who belonged to the highest ranks in terms of talent and comprehension among Chen Hao's friends and family, all clenched their fists and frowned. They also could not understand why Chen Hao had lost his usual calmness in the face of a life-and-death crisis. Facing an existence whose absolute power completely surpassed his, Chen Hao's actions, although he had displayed superb combat skills and comprehension of Dao laws, in front of Xiaoyan, who was stronger than him in all aspects, it was unwise. Instead, it became a useless display of fancy moves. It was fine if he did not move, but when he did move, it would be earth-shattering. This was the tactic that Chen Hao should have used. How could this be? Du Jing suddenly asked himself. Among the crowd, Du Jing, the merciless killer, had always been known to be sinister and cunning, or rather, resourceful and resourceful. That's not right. Du Jing was just muttering to himself, but in the next moment, Du Jing, Chen Shui, and Hu Meinyang all said in unison, "Boss is doing it on purpose. He wants to unseal his mortal state. That's how it should be." In such a situation, even if Xiaoyan didn't underestimate Chen Hao, he wouldn't waste his strength in a situation where he had absolute confidence in himself. In such a situation, putting himself in a life-or-death situation is definitely much better than Xiaoyan directly dealing a fatal blow. The leeway for him to maneuver is also much greater. "I told you, he shouldn't be like this." Hu Meinyang's tightly knitted eyebrows relaxed a little. Chen Shui and the others also nodded slightly. Boom, 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 boom. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, it all happened in an instant. At this moment, within the absolute space restriction, the area within a radius of 10,000 miles had become a scene of continuous explosions. Sword light and fist shadows continuously collided together, tearing the void apart like pitch-black ribbons of light, opening and closing, appearing and disappearing continuously. At the moment of opening and closing, endless chaotic energy was absorbed by Chen Hao and Xiaoyan from the chaotic space. Everyone was certain that if not for the boundary of the chaotic space being sealed, the entire martial arts practice field would have been swallowed by the chaotic space. Even so, the two of them could still absorb the chaotic energy and star fragments from within and turn them into their own terrifying attacks. In reality, Chen Hao, who had initiated the initiative, was now completely suppressed by Xiaoyan. Every time Xiaoyan punched out, his figure would approach a little bit closer, whereas every time Chen Hao struck out with his sword, he would be forced back a little bit, and it became a chase and retreat sweeping through the martial arts practice field within a radius of 10,000 miles. Everywhere they passed, star fragments whistled and exploded, gravel raged, and dust surged. No matter if it was in terms of strength or the utilization of the divine ability laws, Chen Hao was completely at a disadvantage. Of course, the main reason was the restriction of absolute strength. But even if Chen Hao was forced back, he didn't have the slightest intention of escaping, and he retreated in an extremely steady manner, forcefully resisting every move he made. Most people had already started to feel pity for Chen Hao because someone with such terrifying natural talent had surely been forced to come this far. Especially when they thought of the situation where Xiaoyan was still at the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm and could draw down the heavenly tribulation to step into the Daoist Jingxian at any time. Even though Chen Hao was still persisting, the outcome was already clear, unless a miracle occurred. But how could there be so many miracles in the world? Chen Hao's valiant, courageous, and unevasive way of fighting had already explained everything. Without hesitation, he pressed forward courageously. Even he himself knew what the outcome would be, right? That was why he chose such a straightforward way to avoid being trampled on. Boom. Suddenly, Chen Hao, who had been stubbornly retreating and had never chosen to evade, suddenly retreated 1,000 miles. What? You can't hold back anymore? Xiaoyan said proudly. He allowed Chen Hao to retreat and didn't pursue him. I thought you were very strong, but it turns out that you're just so. Chen Hao finally spoke. His cold voice, bright and sharp eyes, and the killing intent that bloomed from between his eyebrows. Even though he was completely at a disadvantage at this moment, he still emitted a breathtaking pressure. His long hair fluttered in the wind, his Daoist robe fluttered in the wind, his extraordinarily handsome face, and the sword light that swallowed and spat out was still as bright as the stars. Is that so? It's easy for me to kill you. Unfortunately, now is not the time. Use your ultimate move. Xiao will do my best to satisfy you. Unseal the transcendent mortal. I also hope that you can advance to the great perfection transcendent mortal after unsealing. Otherwise, it would be a pity. To everyone's surprise, Xiao actually said that. Buzz. The experts in the entire training ground, including the mind of the supreme Hongmeng, were in an uproar. Transcendent mortal. Transcendent mortal. God of slaughter Chen Hao was actually in the transcendent mortal state. This news was simply explosive. At the same time, it was like a cardiac stimulant, causing the cultivators who supported Chen Hao to become excited. Chen Wuliang and the others frowned. They did not expect the Xiao clan's patriarch to have discovered something, as expected, you know. Chen Hao narrowed his eyes, and his aura changed instantly. The corners of his mouth curled up into his signature smile as he said, Xiao clan's ancestor. It's been billions of years. I originally thought that you would at least be a little senile, but I didn't expect you to be so shrewd. I can't hide anything from you. You dare to insult my patriarch? You're your own patriarch? How interesting. Don't act so angry. Whether you admit it or not, I can confirm that you are the Xiao clan's patriarch's 10th life. Even if I, Chen Hao, die, it will be worth it. To die in the hands of an old man who has stood tall in the vast universe galaxy for billions of years. Crash. Before everyone could recover from the shock of Xiao Yan's words, Chen Hao released an even more explosive piece of news. The Xiao clan's patriarch's 10th life. What kind of concept was that? This time, even the Xiao clan members were dumbfounded. They could not help but look at the Xiao clan's patriarch beside them. However, the Xiao clan's patriarch did not look angry at all. Instead, he looked at Chen Hao in the training ground with interest. It was hard to guess. Impudent. I, Xiao Yan, am a direct descendant of the Xiao clan. Even if the patriarch has a 10th life, how can you be worthy of his attack? I, Xiao Yan, am enough. Boom. The Xiao clan patriarch, who had victory in his grasp, originally wanted to use Chen Hao, a rare opponent, to temper himself for the 10th anima. But what he didn't expect was that Chen Hao had actually guessed his background. Of course, he knew that this was definitely Chen Wuliang and Yi Lan's judgment. But that wasn't important, because they didn't have any proof. As long as he did not admit it, the battle would continue, and no one would be able to stop it. However, Chen Hao had actually said it in front of everyone. This made him angry, and he directly raised his strength to the peak. Chapter 906. With Xiao Yan's unscrupulous power, the tremendous spirit, qi, and soul bloomed completely. Like a straight line of smoke, they shot up to the sky. Even the absolute space restriction couldn't stop the mysterious spirit, qi, and soul. It directly tore the sky. The heaven and earth energy instantly surged like a storm, spreading in all directions at an astonishing speed. 100,000 kilometers, 1 million kilometers, 10 million kilometers, 20 million kilometers. The heavenly punishment had just been condensed, but the strength of the pressure wave had already shocked 9,999% of the cultivators present, especially those who had experienced the heavenly punishment from fairy immortals to almighty immortals. They could only admire it. The pressure wave that they triggered at that time was probably less than 1% of the heavenly punishment's power. How strong would such a person be when he stepped into the Daoist Jingxian? Putting aside the fact that Xiao Yan had used all his strength to trigger the heavenly punishment, a 9-storied pagoda appeared behind him as he punched out. It was surrounded by lightning and spun at a high speed, as if it had turned into a whirlpool of lightning that provided unparalleled power to his punch. Boom! With this punch, the sonic boom was like a tsunami, shaking the 9 heavens. The surging fist force tore through the sky, and the sharp rumbling caused the experts outside the absolute space to feel their scalps tingle. Countless divine ability law runes interweaved within the fist light, shaking the entire world. All the experts present widened their eyes in shock as they stared at Xiaoyan, whose expression was cold and whose hair and beard were fluttering. Their minds were greatly shaken. Chen Hao exhaled as he spoke, and it was like a thunderclap had exploded out. At this moment, his handsome face was piercingly cold to the bone while boundless Dao laws surged violently around him, and the Baihui sword above him instantly emanated dazzling and crystalline green light. At this moment, powerful and vast vitality suddenly stretched out in the heavens and the earth, and the Dao manifestation Immortal fruit tree appeared. The thick and translucent branches and leaves seemed to connect to the 9 heavens and 10 earths in an instant. They absorbed the energy of heaven and earth, growing as the wind blew. On the other hand, Chen Hao's body expanded madly along with the growth of the Dao manifestation Immortal fruit tree. In an instant, he was like a true god of death that had descended and looked down upon the world with disdain. Chen Hao. The heavens and the earth shook violently, the 5 elements circulated, and the world was overturned. Accompanied by Chen Hao's all-conquering conviction, his resolution to be fearless of life and death, and his great boldness that looked down upon the world, all of this poured into this sword strike. At this moment, the sound of the Dao rumbled and the world shook. Rumble, Chen Hao and Xiaoyan's strongest collision since the start of the battle had begun. Fist shadows and sword lights collided, and the heavenly phenomenon that had just formed in the 9 heavens nearly collapsed. The absolute space barrier formed by the 20 Grand Mist Venerables shook violently, and cracks even appeared at the core of the barrier. Even though the cracks disappeared in an instant, it was enough to send chills down the spines of the Grand Mist Venerable's spines. Xiaoyan roared furiously. Even he didn't expect that Chen Hao would be able to execute such a powerful strike in his mortal form. Thus, without any hesitation, he followed up with an even more ferocious punch. At the same time, he charged towards Chen Hao at lightning speed. Chen Hao's enormous figure, which resembled a deity descending from the heavens, let out a roar. The giant elemental sword in his hand instantly swung wildly, emitting a sword glow. Xiaoyan's entire body radiated a crystalline light. The 9-story pagoda merged with his body. Every inch of his skin and every strand of his hair exuded an aura that soared into the heavens. His fist was so close that it could dominate the heavens and earth. It carried an indomitable aura that soared into the 9 heavens. Boom! The two of them finally collided, shaking the heavens and shaking the earth. An expanse of dazzling rain of light erupted, and soon after, it became the core of the storm that swallowed everything in all directions. A rain of blood fell from the void. Every drop of blood essence, even in the midst of a terrifying explosion of energy, was sparkling and translucent. Immortal and indestructible. At this moment, Chen Wuliang, Han Mei, Shui Mei, the girls, and their brothers and sisters all clenched their fists in excitement. It would be a tragedy if Chen Hao, who had broken through the transcendent mortal realm, was unable to reach grand immortal realm consummation. No matter how powerful Chen Hao was, it would be impossible for him to stand against Xiaoyan, who had reached grand immortal realm after triggering the heaven's wrath. This was because the heavenly punishment had already been triggered, but the heavenly punishment had yet to begin. Xiaoyan, who had yet to ascend to the grand heavenly realm, had definitely unleashed his strongest attack just now. However, he was unable to exceed his limits and directly destroy Chen Hao. In addition, this strike caused Xiaoyan's body to be filled with sword scars that contained the power of immortality and destruction. The destruction power caused his body to be destroyed unceasingly, and the immortality power made it extremely difficult for him to recover. What did this mean? God of Slaughter Xianxia, although he was not in the great circle of the heavenly immortal stage, he was actually able to fight Xiao Yan, who was in the great circle of the heavenly immortal stage, and even the Xiao clan patriarch, who was in the 10th anima. Who could compare to Qi? Qi. Chapter 907. Great Five Elements Art. Xiao Yan's pupils constricted. After stopping the sword wounds on his body, he spat out these words through his blood-stained teeth. He glared fiercely at Xianxia, who had broken through the transcendent mortal restriction and seemed to be transforming. Great Five Elements Art. Good. Very good. At the corner of the square, a hunched figure was hidden in the crowd. Even the experts around him didn't notice his existence. At this moment, his turbid eyes were emitting two rays of excitement. This person was naturally Yi Lan, who had come secretly. All the onlookers, including Chen Wuliang and the experts of the hidden sects, weren't as shocked as Yi Lan, Xiao Yan, or the Xiao clan's old ancestor. Previously, in the primitive secret realm, they had heard of Xianxia using the Great Five Elements art to fight against the Zerg Queen, Mauricis. They had even seen the records from the token. However, because they weren't there, they couldn't really sense the mysteries behind it. At this moment, the two of them were shocked to find that the mysterious aura released by Xianxia's Great Five Elements art was extremely similar to that of the Five Elements ancestor, who left a legend in the vast universe galaxy when the divine dragon appeared back then. Back then, only a few people knew that the Five Elements ancestor had fought with Yi Lan and the Xiao clan's old ancestor. As for the result, no one knew, however, Yi Lan and the Xiao clan's old ancestor knew about each other's situation. At the same time, they also knew the real reason why the Five Elements ancestor left. He was originally a passerby, and no one could defeat him. He was as lonely as snow, and the ancient chaos universe was just a relay station for him. Naturally, he would leave. Could it be that this kid is related to him? Xiao Yan, the Xiao clan's old ancestor, thought quickly, and his face became more and more gloomy. Thinking of the Five Elements ancestor, even though he had left this world for billions of years, the Xiao clan's old ancestor still didn't have the confidence to fight against him. He couldn't be sure if such a terrifying figure was still alive and where he had traveled to. However, Yi Lan was much calmer. Firstly, he knew that Xianxia had nothing to do with the Five Elements ancestor. Secondly, even if they were related, wouldn't it be better? Wang Qi. Having achieved a breakthrough to transcendent mortal and fused with his Dao body, a majestic, pure, and fearsome surge of energy gushed out from Xianxia's head. In an instant, as though the Milky Way that connected the 9 heavens and the 10 earths, it tore through the firmament and headed straight for the vast galaxy. Great perfection. God of Slaughter Xianxia has also reached the consummate level. Ha! So powerful. Too strong. God of Slaughter Xianxia. In the same realm, no one can defeat him. Boss, how? All the cultivators who supported Xianxia and Xianxia's friends and family were truly excited at this moment. The Xiao family, their loyal supporters, and Xiao Yan's supporters were all horrified at this moment. Their absolute advantage was destined to vanish. The two of them, one at the front and one at the back, had actually only been separated by a single move. Now that both of them had triggered the heavenly punishment, what would happen next? These two people could be called the peak geniuses of vast universe galaxy and even the boundless universe of ancient chaos. If they were to trigger heavenly retribution at the same time and superimpose upon each other, just how terrifying would that be? You are very strong. But it's a pity that you will die today. After a brief moment of shock, a rainbow-colored light flashed around Xiao Yan's body. In an instant, his entire body was covered in a golden armor made of dragon scales. He was armed to the teeth, and a pair of gloves covered in spikes appeared on his fists. Boom! Accompanied by a roar that could shatter mountains and rivers, Xiao Yan's body moved along with his fist punching out. In an instant, an earth-shattering fist energy that could swallow the heavens rushed towards Xianxia from all directions. Endless runes and terrifying energy transformed into 7-colored waves that blotted out the skies and blocked out the sun. At this moment, Xiaoyan finally got serious. He used all of his saint-tier armor and weapons. God of Slaughter Chen Hao had already made him feel pressured. Thus, he couldn't afford to be careless anymore. Right now, he had to kill the other party as soon as possible. Competing with your artifacts? Condense. At the moment when Xiaoyan took out his armor and gloves, Chen Hao's body also emitted a dazzling light. Streaks of mysterious ancient aura instantly bloomed from Chen Hao's body. At the same time, the 5-element sword suddenly turned into 5 streaks of elemental light and disappeared into the void. What replaced it was a golden spear. Although everyone was slightly surprised when they saw that the 5-element sword didn't disappear into Chen Hao's glabella but was shattered into pieces, they didn't think too much about it. They were stunned by the domineering figure of Chen Hao holding the spear. Especially those who had seen Chen Hao kill 10 people in a single step, the God of Slaughter's image of the God of Slaughter, who roared excitedly. God of Slaughter Chen Hao, the dominating God of Slaughter Chen Hao had returned. The spear pierced forward, carrying with it a destructive force and pressure. It collided with Xiaoyan's hedgehog-like fists. Boom! Rumble! There was an earth-shattering sound as the endless Tao laws collapsed. Kacha! Boom! Boom! Just as everyone widened their eyes, waiting to see the result of this collision, something strange happened. What's going on? Countless people cried out in alarm. At the same time, in the square, most of the Daoist Jingxian were the first to be unable to withstand the pressure. They frantically activated their protective qi and frantically retreated. Some of the Daoist Jingxian peak experts and Hongmeng supremes who were barely able to withstand the pressure looked at the void in horror. Tribulation clouds. Chen Hao's tribulation clouds and Xiaoyan's tribulation clouds had already absorbed an endless amount of heaven and earth energy, but they should still need some time to form the first heavenly punishment. But now, in the middle of the 2 tribulation clouds, endless lightning suddenly shot out of the void. In an instant, within the absolute space restriction, Chen Hao and Xiaoyan's surroundings turned into an endless purgatory of lightning. A sea of lightning snakes wreaked havoc and wildly spread in all directions. In the void, the 2 tribulation clouds in the void gathered together at lightning speed. Endless pressure, as if an ancient true immortal had descended, pressed down on everyone until they could not breathe. In an instant, all the Daoist Jingxian supremes had retreated. Hongmeng supremes also began to frantically retreat. At this time, Chen Hao and Xiaoyan were no longer able to continue fighting. They were aghast as they withstood the terrifying pressure and endless lightning that suddenly burst out. In just 2 minutes, there were less than 100 people left in the huge square. Chen Wuliang, Han Mei, Shui Mei, the leader of the Manhuang tribe, the Valley Master of the Poison King Valley, some of the top experts on Chen Wuliang's side, the Patriarch of the Shao clan, and the 11 true immortals of the Shao clan were also left. Golden Scale Dragon Transformation. Suddenly, in the corner of the square, the hunchbacked old man who had become prominent because many cultivators had retreated or even fled out of the square, stared at the 2 tribulation clouds that were rapidly converging in the void with an excited expression and muttered, "Golden Scale Dragon Transformation." Almost at the same time, the patriarch of the Shao clan also said the same 6 words. Chapter 908. Golden Scale Dragon Transformation. Chen Wuliang clenched his fists thoughtfully. "You finally appeared. You old fart, you've come out, so why can't I appear? Nirvana has reached a critical moment. Is it worth it to waste thousands of years and even lose your last hope to come out? Did you see that? Golden Scale Dragon Transformation. This is a golden scale dragon transformation that hasn't appeared in hundreds of millions of years. Chen Hao is dead meat. That's not necessarily true. Who is the golden scale, who can transform into a dragon, before the results are out? It's all unknown. How can Xiaoyan compare to Chen Hao? Oh, it should be said that you're the 10th life that hasn't matured yet. That's great. I didn't expect such a fair choice to appear. At least your dignity has been saved, right? You're already so old, yet you're bullying a junior. You're talking nonsense. What's the golden scale dragon transformation? At this moment, countless cultivators were puzzled and asked the experts for advice. Chen Shui and the others also asked the Poison King Valley Master. Golden scales transforming into dragons is just a metaphor. However, all the cultivators who can trigger this virtual image are all outstanding geniuses. As long as they don't die prematurely, they can become a top expert in the universe in the future. However, although it's rare in the vast universe galaxy, it's still quite common. There should be many among you who have triggered it. However, the golden scale dragon transformation hasn't appeared in hundreds of millions of years. Even controller Chen Wuliang, Shao clan ancestor, and controller Yi Lan haven't triggered it. From what I've heard, the only one who triggered it was the #1 genius girl in the vast universe galaxy, Yi Xian. When she was advancing to Daoist Jingxian, she triggered it. This means that the power of the heavenly immortal realm she possessed at that time had already surpassed the restriction of the laws of the universe on that realm. Master, does that mean that boss has also reached that level? It's hard to say. Look, aren't Senior Yi and Shao clan ancestor arguing? Perhaps the fusion of their heavenly punishments has reached such a degree, or perhaps one of them was able to trigger it, or perhaps both were able to trigger it. Once the heavenly punishment of the golden scale dragon transformation appears, if it succeeds then one will obtain an unimaginable increase, but if it fails then one's body and soul will be destroyed. In short, all we can do now is resign ourselves to fate. The Poison King Valley Master's words caused everyone to become even more nervous. Chi. Kacha. As the two tribulation clouds merged into one, all of the cultivators of East Flow City, no matter where they were, looked up at the tribulation clouds in the void, tens of millions of miles in diameter, as if a path to the heavens had been opened from the highest heavens. Everyone could clearly see the majestic immortal palaces within the disk, the ancient god beasts azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, kirin, phoenix, immortal crane, dragon horse, a true immortal that looked down upon all living beings with disdain. Although all of these were phantoms evolved from thunder, the pressure they released caused countless cultivators to prostrate themselves on the ground in worship. Bang! Roar, 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 roar. Roaring thunder finally poured down, like the cries of 10,000 immortals and the cries of 100 million beasts. 1,000-mile-wide teardrop of light, carrying with it the true might of the heavens, howled down as if it would destroy the world. At this moment, besides Chen Hao and a few other masters, no one could see the figures of Chen Hao and Xiao Yan. Seal! The 20 Hongmeng Supreme Masters that had laid down the absolute space restriction all moved at the same time. With a point of their fingers, the light of countless stars shined in the highest heavens, completely isolating the massive square from East Flow City. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Even so, the earth and mountains within a radius of millions of miles were still shaking and cracking. How was this still the heavenly punishment of a heavenly immortal ascending to grand heavenly immortal? Even an ordinary grand heavenly immortal ascending to Hongmeng Supreme wouldn't have such power. Such a heavenly punishment should not be carried out in the vast thousand domains. Fortunately, there were countless top masters of the vast universe galaxy gathered here, and they were in the Alliance Square, which had the strongest restrictions. Otherwise, all ordinary life within a radius of millions of miles would have been annihilated. Heavenly punishment after heavenly punishment came crashing down. The world was already submerged in dazzling thunder. In one's ears, there was only the endless sound of terrifying explosions. This continued for 4 hours before the endless tribulation clouds finally stopped. The pressure weakened and the sound became quiet, until it was completely silent. A total of 9 layers. But on this day, no one saw what the final result was. They only saw the Shao family old ancestor seem to have aged countless times in an instant. He brought the Shao family members away, and Xiao Yan's figure was nowhere to be seen. At the same time, they also saw Chen Wuliang bring Han Mei, Shui Mei, and many other young men and women with tears in their eyes and sorrowful expressions as they left. All of this indicated that this battle had shaken the entire vast universe galaxy. The two peak geniuses of the vast universe galaxy seemed to have perished in the final layer of heavenly punishment. Fusing together with the heavenly punishment, this heavenly punishment that hadn't appeared in 1,000,000,000 years, the heavenly punishment of golden scales transforming into dragons had ended the young lives of these two monstrous geniuses, regardless of whether it was the god of slaughter Chen Hao, who had risen to prominence in a few short years, or Xiao Yan, who had already made a name for himself 1,000 years ago, or the Xiao clan's ancestor who did not admit it but was believed by many to be the Xiao clan's ancestor's 10th life. All of them made countless people shake their wrists and sigh. After this battle, the miracles and glory that death god Chen Hao had created in his short life were unknown. Whether it was under the control of someone or because death god Chen Hao's influence in the primal mystic realm was too great, it had evolved into countless young cultivators taking death god Chen Hao as their idol, their legend, their goal. Similarly, after this battle, the Manhuang tribe announced their return. Many hidden sects seemed to be unable to bear the loneliness and quickly followed in the footsteps of the Manhuang tribe and announced their return. News after news shook the vast universe galaxy, causing it to be shrouded in a layer of tension and pressure. But this was a matter of the upper echelons. For the young cultivators, the most sensational news was the official establishment of Proud Heavens. Proud Heavens was not an army, not a guardian group, not a sect, not a family. It was an existence similar to an alliance, the Proud Heavens Association. With the support of Chen Wuliang, Poison King Valley, Misty Rain House, Lifeless Sect, Lawn Family, and countless other top experts and large sects, the highest level approval of the vast universe Divine Temple and the Alliance, and the full support of the terrifying Manhuang tribe. Although the Proud Heavens Association only had heavenly immortal experts as the upper echelons of the young cultivators, the commotion and fame it caused was not something that any other sect of the same level could compare to. In particular, its members included many geniuses from the Divine Temple and the Alliance's elite guardians, allowing the Proud Heavens Association to gather many of the top geniuses of the vast universe galaxy. Hu Mainyang, the saintess of the Misty Rain House, the most talented direct descendant of the Manhuang tribe's leader, Coiling Dragon, the successor of the Poison King Valley's Valley Master, Du Jing, the first genius of the Lan family and the son of destiny, Lan Feng. Chen Ling and Li Yang, who came from the primitive mystic realm and had immeasurable talent and potential, were also Chen Wuliang's goddaughters and godsons, as well as Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, Long Ting, Tentai Lian, Xia Yuyu, the sisters, and Bailey Ningbing. There were also more than 1,000 young geniuses from the primitive mystic realm who had become the leaders of the outer circle of Proud Heavens. Chapter 909. What kind of gathering was that? Although a Hongmeng Supreme could destroy the Proud Heavens Association, no one dared to do so. This was a very weak new force in the world, but it was definitely a force that could do whatever it wanted. And the president of the association, to everyone's surprise, was actually Chen Hao, the killing god. In the eyes of the cultivators, the members of the Proud Heavens Association were commemorating the fallen killing god Chen Hao. This was also understandable. After all, Chen Hao's influence was too great, and he was the founder of the Proud Heavens Association. With him as the honorary president, it was undoubtedly better to gather luck and connections. Moreover, the tokens of all the members of the Proud Heavens Association were engraved with Chen Hao's portrait. This made Chen Hao's reputation in the vast universe galaxy, which should have cooled down after he died, rise instead. The Xiao clan's ancestor and some experts vaguely realized that the establishment of the Proud Heavens Association was not as simple as it seemed on the surface, especially the worship of Chen Hao as the spiritual leader, which was even more complicated. It seemed to point to the method of Yi Lan's nirvana to gather the power of faith. Moreover, the topic of Chen Hao, the killing god, had always been manipulated behind the scenes, which was even more obvious. But now, whether it was the Xiao clan's ancestor or the experts of the Xiao clan, they could only bide their time. The Xiao clan's ancestor even announced to the Xiao clan that he would go into a deep level of seclusion again. Master won't die. He told you that this was his great tribulation. Look, I'm fine, aren't I? Xiaoji said with a child's voice full of emotion before leaving, with tears flowing down its face. We are Master's contracted divine beasts, aren't we also fine? Master's life source and soul imprint naturally exist. The 5 divine beasts and Itoda said their last words. No one knew that on the night of the final battle, Chen Hao's first intelligent brain aircraft, Small Wisdom No. 1, shed crystal tears. Only a real life could shed tears. Carrying Itoda and the 5 mythological beasts, who had not shown up since their return, Small Wisdom No. 1 decisively refused to follow the girls and the brothers and sisters and stepped into the chaotic space. Vague and indistinct, there is an image in it. Vague and indistinct, there is something in it. Indistinct and indistinct, there is essence in it. Auspicious chi spread for 84,000 miles, and immortal light shone resplendently. Over 100 cultivators stared blankly at the talking stone that was surrounded by endless immortal light. What profound words! It seems like a profound mantra, but it doesn't really seem like it. No, this is Dao sound. It's a Dao sound that we can't comprehend at all. I don't think it's bright, but I think it's powerful. I can conclude that this is the fate of the Devil Abyss. Nonsense. Do I need you to tell me that? With our combined efforts, we have already reached the deepest part of the Devil Abyss. Other than this strange stone, there is nothing else. What else could it be? Let's take advantage of the fact that it has just been born and quickly think of a way. Only the strong can obtain it. There is only one immortal serendipity, and there are 112 of us. My suggestion is that whoever breaks this restriction first will get the immortal serendipity. What do you think? Zhao Gu, you really have a good plan. Who doesn't know that you have already inherited the teachings of the No. 1 talisman Dao Master, Zhang Hengyuan? Aren't you embarrassed to use your expertise in breaking restrictions as a competition? Ha! Li Mubai, then how do you propose we determine who will get the immortal serendipity? Let's have a showdown? I'm happy to oblige. Don't forget the agreement we made before we came in. Immortal serendipity, those who are fated will know. It's still too early to talk about who will get the immortal serendipity. Everyone, don't you think so? Li Mubai looked at the other cultivators and said, That's right. Auspicious chi spread for 84,000 miles, and immortal light shone everywhere. This is definitely an immortal serendipity. Any competition would be a blasphemy to the immortal serendipity. Li Mubai's words immediately received the support of the majority of the cultivators. There was no doubt that Zhao Gu would get the immortal serendipity by breaking the restriction. If they competed based on combat strength, Zhao Gu, Li Mubai, and the other 3 strongest cultivators who had not spoken yet had a high chance. However, they had no hope at all. Therefore, Li Mubai's question naturally received the support of the majority of the cultivators. Buzz. At this moment, the immortal light emitted by the talking stones suddenly became thousands of times brighter. For a moment, all the cultivators present were temporarily blinded. At this moment, the talking stones suddenly turned into a streamer and tore the void apart. Go after it. Everyone present was the top genius of the Daoist Golden Wonderland in the chaotic universe. They had spent a Herculean effort and risked their lives to break into the deepest part of the demonic abyss and catch a glimpse of the immortal serendipity. How could they let the immortal serendipity escape? In an instant, no one argued. They tore the void apart and chased after it. Block it? It's so fast. Great tracking seal. We can't let it escape. Go. One after another, tiny aircrafts engraved with mysterious runes appeared and began to compete with each other in the vast chaotic space. Everything comes from the origin. Everything is perceived by wisdom. Reaching is through ignorance. Knowing one's enemy is like an empty flower. When one is awake, one can't get it. Those who are awake are like the void. There is no place for all illusions to vanish, and there is no place to attain Tao. All living beings and all kinds of illusions are born from the Tathagata's perfect mind. It is like the emptiness that comes from the void. Although the illusions vanish, the emptiness is not destroyed. The illusions of all living beings vanish in accordance with the illusions. When all illusions vanish, the mind remains unmoved. To the extreme of emptiness, to keep quietness. Everything works together. I observe and recover. All things return to their roots. Returning to their roots is quietness. Quietness is returning to one's destiny. Returning to one's destiny is everlasting. In a daze, there are images. In a daze, there are things. In a daze, there are things. In a daze, there are spirits. In the vast starry river, a wisp of immortal light traversed through layers of spatial storms at a speed thousands of times faster than the speed of light. Not only did it show no signs of stopping, but its speed was also increasing continuously. No one heard it. Within this wisp of immortal light, there was a faint sound of Sanskrit chanting of the great Tao. It contained the supreme scriptures of Buddhism and the essentials of the general principles of Taoism. Although it was so weak that it was almost inaudible, it continued on for a long time. After an unknown period of time, this wisp of immortal light finally broke through the spatial barrier and entered a greater thousand world before disappearing. In a daze, there are images. In a daze, there are things. 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 This is clearly from my Tao Te Ching. What a pity. He is so handsome, so he must be the son of a super-rich family or an official. I can't believe he has contracted such a strange disease. Sky River Sector, Longhua Sanatorium, Longhua Planet, Sky River Sector. Inside the intensive care unit, a young nurse with big eyes and fair skin was leaning forward and putting her ear to the ear of a special patient who was lying on the bed. After hearing the patient's almost inaudible voice, the young nurse murmured to herself with a suspicious look on her face. Chapter 9-10. This was the first patient she had received after becoming the top nurse on Longhua Planet. She had gone through a lot of screening before she was qualified to take care of this special patient. Being able to work on the Longhua Recovery Battleship was undoubtedly an honor and a guarantee of safety. This was because Longhua Recovery Battleship was actually one of the top battleships on Longhua Planet. It could defend, counterattack, and escape any danger at any time. All information about the patient was confidential. What she knew was only name, gender, age, height, weight, and medical history. Everything else was blank. His name was Chen Hao. His gender was obvious when she lifted the blanket. He was 18 years old and 1.82 meters tall, the standard height for a man on Longhua Planet. He wasn't short, but he wasn't tall either. He was 18 years old and had room for improvement. As for his weight, when the nurse saw the information, she immediately pointed it out as a mistake. However, she was told that it was 386 pounds. At that time, the nurse thought that the handsome man in the information must be an old photo. He must be a super fat man now. At that time, she felt a little unlucky and depressed, thinking that she had been tricked by her cousin. Although she was a nurse, as a personal nurse, she naturally preferred to serve a handsome man rather than a nearly 400-pound fatty. However, she didn't expect the image to be real. He looked like he weighed at most 150 pounds, but he really was 400 pounds. His muscles weren't developed either. How could he be so heavy? This was a question that the nurse couldn't understand. However, what puzzled the nurse even more was the mysterious handsome man's medical history. 3 years of pregnancy, the first strange thing. After being born, he didn't cry, make a fuss, or open his eyes. To be exact, he never woke up. If it weren't for the fact that he still had signs of life and the 3 years of pregnancy, he would have been abandoned as a dead baby. The second strange thing. They went to all the famous hospitals on Longhua Planet and couldn't find any cause of illness. On the contrary, the baby's internal organs were much stronger than normal people's. The third strange thing. When the patient was 1 year old, the family heard the baby's slightly moving lips as if he was saying something, but no one could hear it clearly. Moreover, it didn't stop for a moment. 10 years ago, when the Sky River sector was in chaos, Chen Hao was admitted to the best intensive care unit on Longhua Planet, the Longhua Recovery Battleship that normal people couldn't enter at all. There had been a few batches of nurses there. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is not different from emptiness. Ah? Buddhist scriptures again? What the hell is going on? The nurse was stunned. As an outstanding graduate of Longhua Planet's top special nursing school, the young nurse had undergone strict training. Not only was she proficient in medical knowledge, but she had also received systematic learning in many fields such as astronomy, geography, ancient and modern history, the 100 schools of thought, religious beliefs, and many other fields. Her goal was very simple. Not only did she have to take good care of the patients in daily life, she also had to satisfy the patient's needs mentally. He didn't dare to say that he was proficient in everything, but when it came to talking about anything, he could speak clearly and logically. The scriptures of Buddhism and Taoism were obtained by the starship of the Dragon Radiance Star 1 by chance 5,000 years ago. They were regarded as spiritual cultivation scriptures by the upper echelons of the Sky River sector. Even though there hadn't been any breakthroughs, there were many researchers and enthusiasts on Longhua Planet. Especially for some of the big shots, it was a good way to pass the time. Naturally, this became a compulsory subject for the special care staff because many of the special patients they received were important figures and old pedants. It could even be used to chat with patients. How could a person who had never woken up from birth know the Tao Te Ching of the extraterrestrial Laozi? How could he know Buddhist scriptures? No. According to the medical records, he only opened and closed his mouth. No one could hear what he was saying clearly. How could I hear it? It must be an illusion. The nurse patted her hot breasts and muttered to herself. Color is emptiness, emptiness is color. The emptiness of all dharmas is not born, not destroyed, not polluted, not pure, not increasing, not decreasing, so there is no color in the air. There is no world of vision and no realm of consciousness. There is no end of ignorance, there is no age and death, there is no end of age and death. When the nurse put her ear next to Chenhao's ear again, the weak sound waves poured into her mind again. She widened her eyes and couldn't close her cherry mouth. Her small hands pinched her waist hard. It was very painful. It was definitely not an illusion. Listening carefully, she felt like she was in a trance. The sound didn't seem to be real, but directly floated in her heart. Beep beep beep. At this moment, the sound of swiping the card to open the door suddenly came. Xiaohui, what are you doing? You stupid girl, I knew you couldn't resist the temptation of handsome guys. You didn't even notice me coming. You're really intoxicated. A young female nurse who was slightly older than the young nurse but was equally beautiful, had a graceful figure, and was dressed in a uniform that was quite tempting. When she entered the room and saw the young nurse with her back facing her, she immediately ridiculed the young nurse when she leaned over and pressed her face against the patient's face. Sister Xianxia, I'm not like you, falling in love with a comatose man. If it weren't for the fact that I want to see what you call the most handsome man in the Sky River sector, I wouldn't compete for this position. Come and listen. But what's so nice about it? There's no sound at all. You'll get used to it. 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, he's always like this. Even when I feed him, his lips seem to be saying something. Such a handsome, manly man. Now, do you know that I didn't lie to you? I'm serious, Sister Xianxia, I really can hear it. Come, I'm still talking. How is that possible? The beautiful nurse called Sister Xianxia frowned. Although she didn't believe it at all, she still leaned over and put her ear next to the patient's mouth when she saw the serious look on the nurse's face. The girl called Xianxia smelled the familiar scent of the man she had taken care of for a year. Her heart raced again, and her ears turned red when she thought of a certain scene. However, this was her secret. Even if the nurse was her best cousin and best friend, she couldn't tell her. No, there is no sound. Don't be suspicious. A year ago, when I first came here, I also heard it countless times. There is no sound at all. Sister Xianxia, why is your face so red? But I really can hear it. He is talking about Buddhist scriptures and Daoist scriptures. Just now, he was talking about Daoist scriptures? Now he seems to be talking about Daoist scriptures? Can't you hear it? Can you really hear it? Then it seems that you are really fated with him. Take good care of him so that I won't have to worry about him in the future. Sister Qianxian, don't you believe me? Chapter 9:11. As if I'd believe you. You little brat, you've been trying to scare people since you were young. Seeing a ghost, hearing a woman cry, seeing an old grandpa next door who just passed away. Now, I'm warning you, you must keep everything about him a secret. This is our duty. If you weren't my best friend, I wouldn't tell you about his existence. You can't talk nonsense here, or else, if he's taken away, I'll never let you off. Big Sister Qianxian, but maybe my old illness is acting up. But the information says that he has always been in a comatose state since he was born and has never woken up. How could he possibly know about Daoist scriptures and Buddhist scriptures from the outer realms? Could it be? Forget it, I won't scare you anymore. Xiao Hui quickly compromised when she saw her cousin's expression. Qian Qian, whose full name was Lu Qian, was the cousin of the nurse, Lu Hui. They were only 1 year apart in age and had been best friends since they were young. They talked about everything and had the same interests and hobbies. One after the other, they were admitted to the special nursing school for special personnel in China and graduated with excellent results. Because of the marriage of another special nursing nurse who took care of Chen Hao, Lu Qian persuaded her cousin, Lu Hui, to get the job as a special nursing nurse with an extremely high salary and an extremely easy job. This kind of patient was much better than the average old man or big shot. Moreover, it was comfortable to look at and happy to do. Lu Qian's words reminded Lu Hui of her strange illness when she was young. If it weren't for her natural boldness, she would have been sent to a mental hospital long ago. Later, as she grew older, she learned to turn a blind eye and turn a deaf ear to avoid being forced to take medicine and injections. It wasn't until junior high school that she finally returned to normal and no longer saw things that she shouldn't see. At this moment, Lu Hui was sure that her ability that disappeared seemed to have reappeared in this handsome patient. Although she didn't say anything else in case her cousin got mad, she was sure that she wasn't hallucinating. Just like the things that she saw when she was young, she was sure that they were real from the beginning. Because many things had been verified, the 12th one, another little beauty. It's been 10 years, she can actually hear my voice. The Taoist and Buddhist scriptures that I'm chanting are from another world. What is it? Why is it that most of my mind is focused on chanting, unable to truly wake up? Furthermore, Daoist scriptures, Buddhist scriptures. They feel so familiar, as if they belong to me. They are so different from what I have heard. Who am I? I am Chen Hao, the son of the chief scientist of Longhua Planet's Academy of Sciences, Qinhua. My mother is Fan Zhen. My name was obtained in my mother's dream before she was pregnant with me. I'm a strange existence. I've been pregnant for 3 years, and I haven't truly woken up for 18 years. However, I can clearly see and hear everything. I really want to wake up. I'm awake more and more often. I should wake up soon, right? Lu Qian and Lu Hui had no idea that their every move was under Chen Hao's perception. In the same way, no one knew that when Chen Hao was still in his mother's womb, he would occasionally be awake. His consciousness could cover a radius of 1,000 miles. Even the rustling of grass and the crawling of ants would appear clearly in his mind. Today, 18 years later, even though he had never opened his eyes, the occasional sober consciousness allowed him to have a much better understanding of the world than ordinary people. Moreover, everything he heard and saw would be engraved in his mind and would never be forgotten. Now, he was awake more and more often, and the distance his mind could sense was also increasing. He could easily sense things within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. The Sky River sector was a huge sector with many life-bearing planets. Longhua Planet was one of the most powerful planets among the many life-bearing planets, with a diameter of 840 million kilometers. It had a human civilization of hundreds of millions of years. A long, long time ago, it had the ability to explore the starry sky. The lifeless planets in the entire Sky River sector had long become industrial bases for the development of resources for many life-bearing planets. Hundreds of millions of years ago, they had already begun to explore the vast galaxy and extraterrestrial civilizations outside the Sky River sector. This world had super powerful space travel technology, but humans themselves were very weak. In the war 10 years ago, although all news was blocked, Xianxia, who was in a coma, learned from his parents, who had a special identity, that there was an attack by extraterrestrial life forms. It was also at that time that his parents sent him to the most advanced battleship for his safety. In the past 10 years, his parents had devoted themselves to the research of extraterrestrial life forms. The extraterrestrial beings were also human beings. Although there were only a few dozen of them at that time, they had destroyed dozens of vital planets in the Sky River sector. For some unknown reason, these extraterrestrial beings, who had been as powerful as superhumans, had eventually become just a little stronger than ordinary humans. They had either been killed or captured alive, resolving the crisis of the Sky River sector. In the past year, when Xianxia was awake, his extremely powerful senses allowed him to discover some outsiders, or rather extraterrestrial invaders that his parents had mentioned. Occasionally, he sensed that the invaders had displayed divine abilities that did not belong to this world. Xianxia had a very familiar feeling, as if he could do most of those divine abilities. Of course, the premise was that he had to wake up first. In the past year, even his mother had not come to visit him once. Presumably, it had something to do with the arrival of the extraterrestrial invaders. That's more like it. Well, it's time to take a bath with him today. It's your first day here, so I'll guide you. Later, I'll show you something interesting. Something interesting? Isn't it just taking a bath with a handsome zombie? What's so interesting about that? Sister, don't tell me you're going to take advantage of him? But, you damned girl, what nonsense are you talking about? You'll know when the time comes. Look at how red your face is. Big sister, you said that after seeing him, you won't like anyone else. Whatever you've done, just be honest with your little sister. I can completely understand. You can understand? Do you want to? Of course not. I just think that you're right. He's indeed the most handsome person in the world. Although he's a zombie. So attractive. Sister, don't be rash. The previous ones who left, including the one you replaced this time, I'm sure that they left because they secretly did that. That can't be, right? That must be it. They're all semi-naturals. I've secretly investigated them and found out that they all got pregnant a few months after they got married. Naturals. Their status rose a lot. Are you sure? It's true. We're naturals, so we can't mess around. Chapter 9:12. The humans in the Sky River sector were mainly naturals, demi-naturals, and artificial intelligences. The highest status was the naturals who had the ability to reproduce and had not undergone any modifications. Next were the demi-naturals who had undergone modifications and might have the ability to reproduce. Artificial intelligences were people created by the naturals through technological means. They did not have the ability to reproduce and were the lowest level of existence. They could have as many as they wanted. Less than 1,000th of the planets in the Sky River sector were controlled by the naturals. The naturals were the absolute aristocrats. Even if they were idiots, as long as they had the ability to reproduce, they could live a carefree life and enjoy the highest government allowance. The probability of demi-naturals being able to reproduce is less than 1/10. He's a living dead. How could he make all the demi-naturals pregnant? His life characteristics are several times stronger than us ordinary naturals. Maybe that's the reason. Okay, let's start. After we take turns in the future, remember to control yourself. Bathing again, a wisp of Xianxia's conscious divine sense said in a slightly conflicted manner. A few years ago, it was fine. Although they were all young and beautiful nurses, he did not have any reaction. Although his powerful sensory ability allowed him to mature faster than his peers and know a lot more. His body was not fully developed yet. However, since the age of 13, he had to endure great torment whenever a beautiful nurse bathed with him. At the age of 15, his body had already matured. His perfect body and handsome appearance had been seized by the two young nurses taking care of him one after another, making him become a man passively. Later, because he had played with fire many times, he had been hit and had to choose to leave. No one chose to abort because of the status of the naturals in the Sky River sector. In the next 3 years, another 4 young nurses had the same problem, including the one who had just been replaced by Lu Hui. They all had the same problem. Lu Qian was a very strong one. She had taken care of him for a whole year. Although she was on the verge of falling, she was still holding on. However, based on Chen Hao's previous experiences, it would not take long for problems to arise. Look, he's up. Sister? So big. Is this what you mean by fun? Yes. Others have already done it with him and made a few children. Isn't that normal? That's different. His body is healthier and stronger than any natural man, but he has been in a coma since he was born. If we start bathing with him and stimulate that part of his body, perhaps there will be a natural reaction. But now, we are just talking about it, we haven't even started. How can he have a reaction? That's true. This doesn't make sense. Unless he had a consciousness. He can hear us. I've only noticed it recently. Previously, this wouldn't have happened unless I intentionally provoked him, and it would take a while for him to react. Sister, are you sure? Of course. All right, you little girl, you're trying to trick me. When Lu Qian saw Lu Hui's cunning and expectant gaze, she was shocked. Her face immediately turned red and she pounced on Lu Hui. Obviously, she had let it slip. Elder sister, you're really taking advantage of him? Don't, elder sister, this is completely understandable. Even I can't help it? Don't be shy, what's there to be embarrassed about? Really? Then you'll do it today. Sure, I'll do it. Although I've seen a lot, I've never done it before. Lu Hui said boldly. She had seen all kinds of people when she was teaching videos and interning nurses, but she had never really practiced it. Lu Qian was defeated by her cousin's toughness. At the same time, she was no longer as shy as before. Sister, I suspect that he's really conscious. Perhaps he'll wake up soon. There's another possibility. Lu Qian suddenly lowered her voice and whispered into Lu Hui's ear, "We've been bathing regularly every 3 days, and it's causing him to have a regular reaction. Let's do a surprise attack tomorrow. If he still has a reaction on his own, we'll have to be careful when we talk in the future. Otherwise, when he wakes up, won't he be embarrassed to death?" Chen Hao was speechless. How could their whispers work on someone like him who could sense things from millions of miles away? Chen Hao also wanted to control his reaction, but his body and mind were getting more and more mature. What was there that he did not understand? When faced with a young nurse who was full of temptation, any normal man would have a reaction. Just like the young nurse who fell for him earlier. She had nothing to do with him at all. She was willing to have an affair. However, when he thought about it, Chen Hao felt a little conflicted. He was an 18-year-old zombie who might have already had 5 children, and he was forced to do so. Yeah, I'm getting more and more awake. Am I really a natural person from the Sky River sector? Although Chen Hao knew that he was indeed a natural person born by his parents, he was an anomaly who had been pregnant for 3 years. His mother even got his name in her dream. Moreover, when he was in his mother's womb, there was no hazy process of consciousness being born. When he was awake, he had an independent adult mind, and he was constantly chanting scriptures that did not belong to this world. Everything didn't seem to be that simple. Chen Hao also had a feeling that he could only understand but not describe. It was as if he was not complete at all. It was as if he had lost a very important memory, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not remember it. Perhaps only when he stopped chanting Daoist and Buddhist scriptures and truly woke up would he be able to find some clues. Chen Hao did not know that the news of the war in the Sky River sector that was sealed off by the Alliance 10 years ago was entirely because of him. He also did not know that if he had not been born in the Sky River sector, the so-called extraterrestrial invaders would definitely not have discovered this sector that was almost extinct due to the lack of heaven and earth energy. 10 years ago, dozens of Daoist Jingxian had been the first to arrive here. Although they had destroyed dozens of vital planets, in the end, they had either died or been captured alive. Some of them had even mingled with ordinary people and had no choice but to become ordinary people. Even if they had supernatural powers, In the age of chaos where the heaven and earth energy was extinct, they were useless. Honey, we have gathered the top experts in the entire Sky River sector, but so far as the extraterrestrial beings have said, it is impossible to realize the supernatural powers with our current technology. Yes. This is an existence that completely overturns science. They are two extremes of the opposite end of the spectrum. In fact, it is not that we can't research it, but as they said, our entire Sky River sector is in the age of chaos, and there is no heaven and earth energy. Fortunately, there is no such thing. Otherwise, a few dozen of them would have been able to destroy the entire Sky River sector. Unfortunately, we can't read their memories at all. In a room of the Sky River Sector Alliance's Academy of Sciences, a middle-aged couple was discussing softly. These two people were Chen Hao's parents, Chen Hua and Fan Zhen. Chen Hua was the chief scientist of the Longhua Academy of Sciences and the most famous scientist in the Sky River sector. Fan Zhen was Chen Hua's best partner. 10 years ago, when all news of the extraterrestrial invaders were sealed off, it was Chen Hua who led the charge. He gathered all the top scientists in the Sky River sector and formed a research team to study it day and night. 10 years. Honey, I miss Hao so much. Zhen, I miss him too. But now we can't. This research project is related to the life and death of our Sky River sector. We can't delay it for a moment. When our son wakes up, he will understand us. Anyway, our son can't see us. We have installed the most advanced surveillance equipment on the warship of the sanatorium. You can see our son's every move. Oh right, yesterday, the government told me that our son's special nurse has changed again. Let's go back to the room and take a look. Why did it change again? Could it be that we have another grandson or granddaughter? Cough cough. It should be. This has nothing to do with how. The government will help us take care of our grandchildren. When we go back, we will pick them up. As for those semi-naturals, they have evil intentions. Don't even think about becoming a daughter-in-law. They don't deserve it. The allowance they get is already too good for them. The new special nurse is Lu Qian's cousin, Lu Hui. She is also carefully selected by the government for how her identity, family background, and appearance are worthy of how. Oh, let's go and take a look. We can't let how be ruined. Beep beep beep. Just as the two of them were about to return to the room, the crisp sound of the doorbell suddenly came from the hall. Is there any progress in the interrogation? It was late at night. For someone to visit at this time, it must be an emergency. Before the door was opened, Chen Hua anxiously asked the person in the video who was wearing a standard military uniform. Yes, Professor Chen. Finally, one of them was completely exhausted. He couldn't withstand our interrogation and confessed some things. We don't know if it's true or not. Good. Tell us. Chen Hua said excitedly. They came to Sky River sector to look for immortal fate. Immortal fate? What is immortal fate? He said it was a stone that could talk and that it was chanting mysterious scriptures all the time. It probably entered Sky River sector a few years earlier than them. When I asked him what scriptures it was, he said a few words casually. It was very similar to the Daoist scriptures and Buddhist scriptures that Sky River sector obtained from the outer space thousands of years ago. Daoist scriptures, Buddhist scriptures. There's such a thing? Chen Hua was slightly surprised. He frowned for a moment and said, maybe it's true. Daoist scriptures and Buddhist scriptures are mysterious things. Maybe it's really the kind of magic that they have. What else do you want to know? Chapter 9:13. There are a total of 112 of them. What? Chen Hua jumped to his feet, his eyebrows furrowed into a line, and his body trembled. Is this true? Professor, it should be. It should be true. The lie detector shows normal. The officer also said with a solemn expression. What did it mean to have 112 people? 10 years ago, only 39 people had destroyed 56 habitable planets. Countless habitable planets and industrial bases had been destroyed. That terrifying destructive power was like a nightmare, and it was still vivid in their minds. If it were not for the fact that they had exhausted their energy and could not replenish it in the Sky River sector, it would have probably evolved into a catastrophe for the entire Sky River sector. Although Xianxia did not think that the 39 people were all the extraterrestrial beings who had broken into the Sky River sector, there should be very few of them who had escaped. After all, there were only 39 microaircrafts that had been monitored at that time. But now, the news brought by the officer shattered his assumptions. The lie detector may not be useful for extraterrestrial beings like them. Go on. The first 39 people who entered the Sky River sector were the fastest among the 112 people, and they were also discovered by our surveillance at the first time. But later, because of their information, they secretly sneaked into the Sky River sector one after another, secretly looking for the immortal opportunity. He said that the Sky River sector was of no value to them at all. If we had not treated them as extraterrestrial invaders from the beginning, the fight 10 years ago would not have happened at all. They are all from the Daoist golden wonderland of the boundless universe. Let them go now, and everything can be discussed. As long as they find the immortal opportunity, they will leave. The 16 people who were killed by us can be forgiven. Otherwise, once one of them escapes from the Sky River sector, the cultivators of the boundless universe who are more powerful than them will inevitably come to the Sky River sector. At that time, it will be the moment of the Sky River sector's extinction. Did you bring the detailed interrogation records? Let's go and report to the Union government with me. Yes, Professor. Zhen, don't wait for me. Take a rest first. Xianxia turned to Fan Zhen and quickly left with the officer. Looking at Xianhua's departing back, Fan Zhen sighed softly. They hadn't had a good day's rest in the past 10 years. Although today's rest was given after the experts of the research team had almost given up on their research, tonight was going to be a sleepless night for the entire Sky River sector. Silently returning to the room, Fan Zhen sat there quietly, motionless. Half an hour later, he murmured, "I've been looking for extraterrestrial life, and I've finally found one. But I didn't expect that it would bring endless panic and disaster. Immortals, they really exist. That means there are many immortals. And there are 83 terrifying existences who can destroy a small planet with a wave of their hand in the Milky Way star area. Behind them, there are more powerful existences. The vast thousand chaotic world. What kind of world is that? Is there still hope for the Sky River sector?" Fan Zhen shook her head sadly. She threw away the unbearable pressure in her heart and looked at a red button. "Son, Mom should let go of everything and go back to accompany you. Are you an immortal?" Fan Zhen gently pressed the red button. 21 years ago, when Fan Zhen was pregnant with Xianxia, she often had the same bizarre dream. In this bizarre dream, she saw a young man sitting cross-legged. When his lips opened and closed, lotus flowers bloomed. The young man was extraordinarily handsome, and his whole body was shrouded in a bright light. In the dream, Fan Zhen had the urge to kneel down and worship him. She heard countless ethereal voices, from men and women, like prayers and summoning, like wisps of golden light constantly shuttling through the endless void and drifting to the young man's side. Xianxia was the only name involved. After a year of pregnancy, everything was normal, but there were no signs of the child being born. Her husband had repeatedly asked for a C-section, but Fan Zhen firmly refused. Through the fetal examination, she could clearly see that her son was normal. Although he was only a baby, just like the scene in her dream, he was sitting cross-legged in her womb. As the assistant of the top scientist in the Sky River sector, she didn't believe in ghosts and gods, but the frequent dreams made her believe that her son was absolutely extraordinary. 3 years later, her son was finally born. Since then, her strange dream had never appeared again. This made Fan Zhen believe that everything was because of her son. Therefore, she insisted on naming her son Xianxia. Especially when she saw her son's lips opening and closing like the young man in her dream, and his eyebrows were very similar, she was even more convinced that her dream was not made up out of nothing. She mentioned it to her husband many times, but Xianxia fooled her by saying, "Our son is naturally great." Obviously, Xianxia, a top scientist, didn't believe in things outside of science. After the birth, her son never woke up. Fan Zhen was not as anxious as Xianxia. Although she went to all the famous hospitals and tried all the methods, she still failed. But Fan Zhen firmly believed that her son, who had been pregnant for 3 years, would wake up and be healthy. Then, 10 years ago, the invasion of superhumans made her follow Chenhua to shoulder the research work of extraterrestrial civilization, which may threaten the survival of the Sky River sector. Even seeing her son became an extravagant hope. She could only rely on the monitoring device secretly left behind by Chenhua. Although her son was in a coma as he grew up day by day, his appearance was exactly the same as the godlike young man in her dream. His lips were still opening and closing day and night, as if he was chanting something. Voila, as the red button was pressed, Fan Zhen, who hadn't checked on her son's situation for 2 months, finally saw the handsome and charming face again. Although the simulated 3-dimensional image was illusory, Fan Zhen reached out her hand lovingly, wanting to touch her son's face. After quietly watching for a while, Fan Zhen turned off the real-time monitoring and started today's surveillance video. Today was the day the new special nurse took office. She wanted to see what kind of natural person the government had selected for her son. Soon, she found the scene where Lu Hui appeared. She was very satisfied. Whether it was her appearance or figure, she was definitely a delicate one among the natural people. But then, Lu Hui leaned over Chenhao's mouth and muttered to herself with a shocked expression, which made Fan Zhen exclaim and widen her eyes. Taoist scriptures. Buddhist scriptures. She can hear what Hao is chanting? At this moment, Fan Zhen thought of the report officer's words. He said that she was a talking stone, chanting mysterious scriptures all the time. She probably entered the Sky River sector a few years earlier than them. When I asked him what scriptures he was chanting, he said a few words casually. It was very similar to the Taoist scriptures and Buddhist scriptures that our Sky River sector obtained from extraterrestrials thousands of years ago. Chapter 9:14. Fan Zhen watched the scene after Nurse Lu Hui appeared in detail, especially the words of Lu Hui and Lu Qian. She was extremely shocked, and her mood became extremely complicated. She even felt an inexplicable panic. Her son, from the time she was pregnant until now, had revealed all kinds of strange things. Including the pregnancy, it had been 21 years, but he still could not wake up. However, his characteristics in all aspects were much stronger than ordinary people. Counting, including the pregnancy, it was indeed 11 years earlier than the extraterrestrial life. The only difference was that the immortal opportunity they talked about was a talking stone, which was a very absurd thing in itself. If she had not seen the magical power of extraterrestrial life, Fan Zhen would never have associated it with her son. But now, all the signs could no longer be deduced with common sense. Nurse Lu Hui could hear her son's voice. Compared to those existences, it was very normal. Fan Zhen could be sure that Lu Hui's words were definitely true from her muttering to her conversation with Lu Qian. Taoist scriptures, Buddhist scriptures, Fan Zhen murmured. My son, could it be the immortal opportunity they are looking for? The reincarnation of a talking stone. Fan Zhen threw away common sense and could be said to be wild and imaginative. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. This made Fan Zhen's mood more complicated and anxious. That night, the heads of all the planets in the entire Sky River sector secretly held a 3-dimensional remote meeting. Chen Hua and the officer respectively reported the progress of the research and interrogation results of the extraterrestrial civilization. There was no progress in the research progress, or the fundamental abandonment of all existing scientific theories and transfer to the study of the mysteries of human beings. Only then could there be progress. However, the premise was that the Sky River sector had the so-called spiritual energy of heaven and earth from foreign superhumans. This meant that the research was almost declared a failure. The officer's report of the interrogation results set off a fierce debate. The meeting lasted for 8 hours. Finally, after a vote, the conclusion was reached by a huge margin. Compromise. The joint research team was announced on the spot and everyone returned to their respective planets. The more than 20 extraterrestrial superhumans under control were further contacted and negotiated with by the Alliance Army. As long as the safety of the Sky River sector could be guaranteed, they would fully cooperate with the other party to find the so-called immortal opportunity and strive to resolve the grievances from 10 years ago and establish a good diplomatic relationship with the other party. It could be said that this was an all-round compromise. Qianhua and the officer had expected such a result. The severe consequences caused by the 39 people back then still left a lingering fear in their hearts. What would happen if the 73 people hiding in the Sky River sector rioted again? Even if the Sky River sector could kill or capture him, the price they would have to pay would be unbearable. Not to mention, the other party was a higher life form from another world called the chaotic boundless world. If one of them managed to escape from the Sky River sector and bring back news, the Sky River sector would fall into an era of eternal damnation. Hubby, what happened to you? On the second day, Fan Zhen, who was waiting anxiously, saw Qianhua, who seemed to have aged a lot overnight. She hesitantly pounced towards Qianhua and forcefully held back the words she wanted to say. It's over. Qianhua hugged his wife and closed his eyes. He said softly, the Union government has chosen to compromise and the research team has been disbanded. Everything else was handed over to the Alliance military to handle. Xinjin, we will return to Longhua planet today. In the future we will live the life you want. Hubby, what are you talking about? What kind of life do I want? The life you like is the life I want. Qianhua shook his head and said, I have devoted my life to researching cutting-edge weapons, but in the end, I can't even compare to the power of an extraterrestrial life form. What's the use of continuing to research? Maybe we were wrong from the beginning. It should be said that the Sky River sector has limited everything. For the rest of our lives, we will take our son and share the joy of family. Hubby, let's go. When I return, I will submit my resignation. Qianhua patted his wife's thin back and said firmly. Hubby, however, Fan Zhen separated from her husband. She seemed to be very conflicted. Xinjin, what's wrong? Are you unhappy? For the first half of your life, you lived for me. For the second half, let me live for you and our son. No. Hubby, come with me. Fan Zhen suddenly plucked up her courage and pulled Qianhua to the bedroom. Although she yearned for the life her husband talked about, she still chose to tell her husband her guess. Last night, after Qianhua left, she thought about it all night and made a decision. Whether her guess was true or not, she had to say it for her son. The so-called spiritual energy of heaven and earth, of the extraterrestrial life form might be the real reason why her son couldn't wake up. Although her son's vital signs were healthier than anyone else's, if her son was immersed in a muddle-headed deep sleep for the rest of his life, what was the point? He was just a living dead. During the 3 years of pregnancy, she saw countless scenes in the dream, which made her believe that her son, even if he was an extraterrestrial life form, was also an extraordinary person. She couldn't forget the emotional and devout voices calling her son. She also couldn't forget the majesty that made her want to bow down in worship. If her son was the immortal fate that the extraterrestrial life form was pursuing, then she would let them take her son away. Even if she would be separated from her son forever and could never see him again, it would be worth it if her son could return to the world that belonged to him. This, sure enough, when Qianhua heard the words of the young nurse Yi Hui talking to herself in the video of the simulation scene, his expression became extremely surprised. Then, in the conversation between Yi Hui and Yi Qian, the tone of certainty made Qianhua frown and his body tremble slightly. Then he thought of the dream that his wife told him when she was pregnant with Chen Hao, but he laughed it off. Qianhua looked at Fan Zhen and said, Xinjin, do you think that our son is the immortal fate that they are looking for? Yes, a stone that can talk. The words it says are like Daoist scriptures and Buddhist scriptures. Ever since our son was born, he has been chanting something. And your dream back then? Perhaps? Come, let's go back immediately. Xinjin, you can't tell anyone about this. Otherwise, with my current status and identity, I can't protect Hao heir. Qianhua said. No, hubby. Instead of letting our son sleep muddle-headedly for the rest of his life, we might as well let go. Chapter 9:15. Let go. Husband, I know what you're worried about. Last night I thought about it. I'm more and more certain that is the immortal destiny they're looking for. Since it's the immortal destiny, they shouldn't harm Also, should be the same kind of person as them, and the environment of our Sky River sector isn't suitable for them at all. I think that hasn't woken up for 18 years since he was born because of the restrictions of the Sky River sector. There's no heaven and earth spirit chi here. If we wait for like this, I'm afraid he'll have to spend his life in this kind of deep sleep. This is cruel for I don't want to be separated from but I don't want to spend his life like this. I believe that even in their world, is not an ordinary person. That's the world that belongs to him, where he can be wonderful. Fanjin stared at Chenhua and said softly but firmly. In front of her husband, she was an assistant. She had always been obedient and rarely spoke up. But today, the great and selfless motherly love made Fanjin exude a firmness that she had never felt before. Chenhua frowned for a moment, then sighed softly. He hugged Fanjin again and said, "You're right." Tears filled Fanjin's eyes in an instant, and she sobbed silently. Report. While the big shots of the Alliance military were discussing the specific negotiation plan, a guard suddenly pressed the transmission button. What's the matter? Didn't we say that no one is to disturb you? The commander of the Alliance military frowned. Marshal, Professor Chen wants to see you. Professor Chen? Damn it. Professor Chen still needs to see you? Invite him in immediately. The commander of the Alliance military said angrily. This marshal was also the #1 big shot of Longhua planet's military. Even if he wasn't from Longhua planet, none of the big shots present had any objections to Chenhua's arrival. Who was Chenhua? The chief scientist of the Alliance's Academy of Sciences, the founder of countless cutting-edge weapons in the entire Sky River sector, was definitely a godfather-level existence. Chenhua played a decisive role in the strength of the army. Not to mention the big shots of the army, even the leaders of the major vital planets in the Sky River sector were extremely respectful to him. At this moment, the research team had just been disbanded, so it didn't have much impact on Chenhua's status. The guard replied respectfully. Then the door opened. Professor Chen, why didn't you tell me you were coming? If you have any instructions, feel free to tell me. Hello, Professor Chen. Oh, Professor Chen. When Chenhua walked into the meeting room, all the military leaders of the vital planets stood up and greeted him respectfully. Longhua planet's marshal said affectionately. I'm very sorry to disturb the general's discussion at this time. I have a presumptuous request, and I hope that the generals can give me a way out. Chenhua said in a deep voice. Professor Chen, if you have anything to say, just say it. As long as we can do it, I believe that no one will refuse. Yes, Professor Chen. Thank you, everyone. Chenhua looked at the respectful gazes and sighed in his heart. I want to get in touch with them before you formally negotiate with them. I know that this is against the rules. But I have something very important that I need to verify. Perhaps it will be of help to the Sky River sector, or perhaps it will be our biggest bargaining chip in the negotiation. Crash. Chenhua's words caused an uproar among the military leaders present. Bargaining chip? What bargaining chip could the Sky River sector have in the face of powerful extraterrestrial superhumans? They had already set the bottom line, which was to ensure the safety of the Sky River sector. Everything else would be compromised, and they would unconditionally support the other party. Looking at the pairs of doubtful eyes, Chenhua said in a deep voice, Before I confirm it, I can't say. I'm very sorry. Professor Chen, the heads of state have specifically instructed that you are not allowed to come into contact with extraterrestrial beings. There is only one reason, and that is to protect your safety. You are too important to Longhua planet and the entire Sky River sector. We can't afford to lose you. And with their supernatural powers that are completely beyond imagination, if they know your identity, I'm afraid you will be in danger. Yes, Professor Chen, although they are temporarily under control, In the past few years of interrogations, how many outstanding military officers have been driven insane by a single look? Thank you for your concern. This is really important. Don't worry, nothing will happen. I will talk to them as an ordinary person. All right, Professor Chin, please wait a moment. We have to report this matter to the heads of state. Professor Chin, please tell them directly. Okay, Xinhua replied. Even he did not expect that the heads of state would value him so much. Soon, in the conference hall, he directly contacted the head of state of Longhua planet. Chen Hua still said the same thing and was very determined. In the end, the head of state agreed and asked Xinhua to pay attention to his own safety. At the same time, Longhua Planet's Secret Archives Bureau pulled out the original Taoist scripture and Buddhist scripture records brought back by Longhua Planet Universe number 1 5,000 years ago and sent them to Xinhua's personal computer through a special channel. Xinhua was fully armed by the military bosses and entered the underground base where the extraterrestrial superhumans were imprisoned. Professor Chen, are you sure you don't want anyone to accompany you? This matter is very important. I can do it alone. Also, Marshal, please turn off all the surveillance. Thank you. All right. Professor Chen, then be careful. If there is a situation, please immediately activate the defense system. After Chen Hua finished speaking, he strode through the gate of the base. Beep, beep, beep. A series of special instructions were input, and the door of the room that closed the extraterrestrial being who had previously interrogated and confessed some things slowly opened. The extraterrestrial being shrouded in terrifying lightning heard the movement and calmly opened his eyes. He believed that the Sky River sector would inevitably yield to his confession. Calculating the time, now should be the time to negotiate with him. However, when this extraterrestrial being opened his eyes and saw the person who had come, he was suddenly shocked. His eyes widened as he looked at Xinhua and said, "Holy light." "Hello." Xinhua was slightly taken aback. He did not understand why the other party was so surprised to see him, but he quickly calmed down and took a deep breath. "Are you from the Sky River sector?" "Yes." "Strange. Is there an expert in the Sky River sector? Why do you have the aura of a powerful being? Although it is very weak." "Powerful being?" Chen Hua was stunned again. Before entering, Chen Hao had thought of all the ways to test the other party. He had even pulled out the first-hand information of Taoist scripture and Buddhist scripture that the Longhua Universe number 1 battleship had obtained by chance 5,000 years ago. However, he did not expect such an opening. Chapter 9:16. Sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Chen Hua said, "What is the blessing of a powerful being?" The blessing of a powerful being is the Tao mark left by the person who comprehended the Tao. The holy light on your body is very weak. It shouldn't be you who received the blessing, but someone you often have close contact with. It's really strange. The Sky River sector is in the age of chaos. Is it done by our people? Someone I often have close contact with? Chen Hua was extremely smart. Although he didn't understand what the other person was saying, he quickly thought of his wife. She was the only person he often had close contact with. His wife was pregnant for 3 years, and then took care of their son for 8 years. Needless to say, she was almost inseparable from their son for the last 8 years. The scene in his wife's dream, his son's chanting lips, was that the other person's so-called blessing? Do you know who it is? Sorry, the only person I often have close contact with is my wife. My wife can't be one of you. That's strange. Have you ever noticed anything strange? It's not necessarily a stone that can talk. Of course, you shouldn't be able to hear the Tao sound. I don't think so. A stone that can talk is your so-called immortal fate. I don't think I've seen it before. Could it be something else or other life forms? Chen Hua asked tentatively. This was the only thing he and Fanjin couldn't be sure of. The other person's so-called immortal fate was a stone that could talk, and his son was indeed a life form that was reproduced and born. Was it possible for the immortal fate to be reincarnated as a human? He and his wife had to figure this out. At the same time, they had to figure out what to do with the immortal fate after they got it. Unless they could be sure of their son's safety, they wouldn't dare to hand over their son easily. The immortal fate is psychic. It must have been enlightened by a supreme being and contains boundless Tao marks. It may be an existence that gives birth to all things and reincarnates into a human. Everything is possible. The extraterrestrial superhumans stared at Xianxia with shining eyes and said, "Say it, I believe you must have found something, so you came to talk to me. To tell you the truth, the blessing of the holy light is very likely to be the result of long-term contact with the immortal fate. The immortal fate is always emitting the sound of the great Tao. Although you mortals who haven't even awakened your spiritual roots can't hear it, there's no problem to get a certain amount of the holy light blessing. Wait a moment. I'll let you hear something first." Beep beep beep. After Xianxia finished speaking, he activated his personal AI. This was the top microbrain in the entire Sky River sector, which Xianxia had custom-made for himself. 4 hours ago. On the battleship of Longhua Sanatorium, the young nurse, Lu Hui, was suddenly summoned by the director. This was the second day of her registration. Now that she was summoned by the director, Nurse Lu Hui felt uneasy. Could it be that something had happened? Then, when she saw the director and heard the director's instructions, Nurse Lu Hui's pretty face flushed red. At the same time, she was extremely shocked. She never thought that she and her cousin would be under the surveillance of others when they were taking care of Chen Hao, a special patient. How could she, who had just turned 20, not blush? Especially when she thought about what she and her cousin had said, but what surprised her even more was that the dean's order was for her to record Chen Hao's recitation, which only she could hear. 4 hours later, it was handed over to the dean in the form of a recording. Could it be that the dean believed that no one had ever believed in her strange ability? Originally, he had planned to launch a surprise attack on Chen Hao today to test that he already had consciousness, but his plan was disrupted by the sudden mission. Even his cousin, Lu Qian, was temporarily sent away. Nurse Lu Hui was puzzled and curious. While listening to Chen Hao's recitation, she repeated the recording. 4 hours later, she handed it over to the director. After the director instructed Nurse Lu Hui not to disclose it to anyone, he immediately sent it to a private email. The Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. This is what I have heard for a moment. Entering the Great Light Bodhisattva Samadhi is receiving. Everything is presided over by Tathagata Guanyin. It is the place where all sentient beings are in peace. Body and mind are in nirvana. Equality is in the original state. Perfection is in the 10 directions. Following the path of No 2, the Pure Land appears in the realm of No 2. When the incense burner heats up, the world of Dharma is covered in smoke. The sea of Buddhas will hear it from afar. Auspicious clouds form everywhere. Sincerity is in Een. This is what I have heard. For a moment Buddha is in the Shiwei kingdom. Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, when walking the deep Prajna Pramitha, saw that the 5 skandhas are all emptiness. Transcended all suffering. Sarira. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is emptiness. Emptiness is emptiness. Space is emptiness. Thought and knowledge are all the same. As Chen Hua clicked on the recording of the Tao scripture and Buddhist scripture that Dragon Bloom No. 1 had coincidentally captured in outer space 5,000 years ago, the sound was clearly very soft, but it exuded a vast and majestic aura. It was as if billions of people were chanting at the same time, giving off an indescribable feeling of vastness, and it filled the small forbidden room. There was only one Tao scripture, but there were several Buddhist scriptures. The names Tao scripture and Buddhist scripture were simply summarized by the Milky Way sector based on the contents of the scriptures. Unfortunately, although they had clearly captured the sound, they could not find the source of the sound no matter how hard they tried. It was as if the sound had traveled through the endless galaxy and time, resonating with the Tao scripture and Buddhist scripture, and competing with Buddhism. When the recording played, the extraterrestrial being was horrified. He closed his eyes slightly, pricked up his ears, and listened without saying a word. When the recording ended, the extraterrestrial being closed his eyes slightly. After more than 10 minutes of silence, he opened his eyes reluctantly. It contains the charm of the Sanskrit Great Path. The collision of 2 great paths, the convergence of vast beliefs and billions of beliefs. So powerful, so powerful. How powerful must the greater thousand worlds be to emit such Tao scripture? Could it be related to immortal fate? The extraterrestrial being seemed to be talking to himself. Then he suddenly looked at Xianxia and said, "Where did you get it? It can't be from the Milky Way sector. This is the sound that our battleship accidentally captured in outer space 5,000 years ago. Unfortunately, we could not find the source of the sound. Missed opportunity. Missed opportunity. What a pity. If we cultivators had encountered it, it would definitely be an unparalleled opportunity. What a pity, what a pity. You are all mortals. However, although the sound you captured contains the supreme scripture and the charm of the Sanskrit Great Path, it can't enhance your body. Listen to this again." Xianxia hesitated slightly, then clicked on the recording that the director of Longhua Sanatorium had sent to him before he came in. Immediately, the voice of the little nurse, Lu Hui, sounded intermittent, as if it was a tongue twister. This time, the extraterrestrial being did not even close his eyes. Instead, he frowned slightly. However, as the little nurse repeated more and more of the content, the extraterrestrial being's eyes widened. Before the little nurse finished playing the recording, he said excitedly, "The scripture chanted by the immortal fate. This is the scripture chanted by the immortal fate. You know where the immortal fate is, right?" Chapter 9:17. Don't worry. This girl is the only one who can hear the voice of your so-called immortal fate. This is her retelling of the record. Who is this girl and what the specific situation is? I need to know more before I can be sure. I want to ask you a few questions first. Xianxia said in a low voice. The response of the extraterrestrial life was obviously the voice of the immortal fate from the slightly different scriptures of Daoist and Buddhist scriptures. Then, it meant that his son was the immortal fate they were looking for. Like Fanzhen, Xianxia didn't want his son to sleep for the rest of his life. But he couldn't give it to the extraterrestrial life that he didn't understand at all. Before giving it to them, he had to make sure one thing. That was, how would they treat the immortal fate after getting it? But Xianxia couldn't ask directly. This was the real reason why Xianxia didn't specify that the immortal fate was his son. Moreover, according to Xianhua's understanding of these extraterrestrial life, they were not united as a whole. This might mean that even if he gave it to them, they would fight for it. Who could guarantee his son's absolute safety? Well, as long as you can let me get the immortal fate, let alone a problem, I will take you to our chaotic colossal world to become a cultivator and get longevity, or even immortality. There is no problem. You mean it? Xianxia suddenly showed extreme excitement and yearning. He knew very well that if he wanted to get the real answer he wanted, he had to beat around the bush. Since the other party was tempting him with benefits, the more eager and yearning he showed, the less vigilant the other party would be, and the greater the possibility of telling the truth. Of course, I, Zhao Guiyu, am the genius disciple of the top family in the chaotic colossal world, the dignified Daoist Jingxian. If you can get the immortal fate, you may become the supreme expert in the chaotic colossal world. Taking you there is just a piece of cake. I can sense that your soul is much stronger than ordinary people. When we enter the chaotic universe, I will use peerless elixirs and divine sense to help you be reborn and cleanse your meridians and marrows. Then, you will be able to step into the ranks of cultivators. I can provide you with abundant spiritual chi of heaven and earth, elixirs, manuals, and other cultivation resources. By then, you will have a lifespan of 10,000 years, 100,000 years, or even 1,000,000 years. Right now, you're just a mortal, an ant-like existence. Even if your so-called technology can extend your lifespan to a certain extent, compared to a cultivator, it's like the difference between a firefly and the moon. Doing all this is a very simple matter for me. Zhao Guiyu solemnly vowed. Zhao Guiyu was very clear that although his talent and combat strength were at the top of the list among the 112 people, he had now exhausted all his energy and become a prisoner. Moreover, there were other prisoners like him. They were all competitors. More importantly, The cultivators who had arrived later must have hidden themselves among the humans of the Sky River sector, searching for the celestial opportunity because they had sensed their situation. Otherwise, when they had just arrived here, it would have been as easy as turning over one's hand to save them. Why not save them? It was just one less person and one less competitor. It could be said that Qinhua's sudden arrival today had given Zhao Guiyu the greatest hope. Is the celestial opportunity so powerful? Qinhua pretended to be surprised. Of course. Don't expect to get it by yourself. It's useless to you. To tell you the truth, this time, among the 112 people, my strength is the strongest. Only when I get the celestial opportunity can I deter them. If anyone else gets it, they will face a life and death situation. Moreover, no one will agree to your generous conditions. Just now, I told you that the celestial opportunity has been enlightened by a real Almighty. The so-called enlightened, you can understand it as the blessing of the Almighty that I mentioned just now. However, it's much more powerful than the blessing. It's the Tao marks left behind by the Almighty's lifetime cultivation. Even if ordinary people get it, they can't absorb it, because all kinds of signs have shown that the celestial opportunity has given birth to spiritual intelligence. If you really want to get it, you have to refine its spiritual intelligence and integrate its Tao marks into your body. This requires a very high level of cultivation and an extremely powerful soul to accomplish. Hearing Zhao Guiyu's clear explanation, Qinhua gasped in his heart. He was secretly glad that he didn't stupidly confess directly. His purpose of coming here had almost been accomplished. Forcefully suppressing the fear in his heart, Qinhua pretended to be excited and said, "Okay, then I will contact that girl as soon as possible to understand the specific situation of the celestial opportunity. Goodbye." Wait, since you can come here, your status should be high, right? It's best not to disclose this to my other companions. Otherwise, the result will be unpredictable. It's not too late to tell them after I get the celestial opportunity. At that time, I will lead them out of here and won't endanger the safety of the Sky River sector. Understood? As long as you keep your promise, I will do my best to fulfill it. What's your name? Qinhua. I'm here on behalf of the experts of the Academy of Sciences. Soon, the Alliance military will come to you to negotiate. You have to delay temporarily. Otherwise, your companions and you will be released, and the Alliance will do its best to help you find the celestial opportunity. In that case, it's not something I can control. It will take at least 10 days. Qinhua turned around and thought for a moment. Then he said decisively, "That's easy. I will wait for your news." Okay. If they ask what I want to talk to you about, just say it's about the issue of your miniature aircrafts. I didn't expect you to be so meticulous. Go. The sooner the better. Okay. Goodbye. Qinhua turned around and strode out. Professor. My deduction should be true. Qinhua's eyes shone with confidence and wisdom again. When he saw the generals waiting for him, he said in a deep voice, "Professor, what's your deduction? Can it really be used as a bargaining chip in this negotiation? Let's talk in the conference room." Qinhua took a deep breath and said, on one hand, it was his son. On the other hand, it was related to the future of billions of lives in the Sky River sector. There was no doubt about which was more important. However, when it came to his own flesh and blood, who could make a decision without hesitation? Qinhua, as the chief scientist of the Sky River Sector Alliance's Academy of Sciences, had considered all kinds of factors and the outcome before he came here. For his son, he could not do anything that would betray the billions of lives in the Sky River sector. However, he could not sacrifice his family for the sake of justice. In this conversation, in addition to proving that he could not give his son to the other party, he also learned about the relationship between the 112 extraterrestrial beings. At the same time, the importance of the celestial opportunity to them also made Qinhua conclude that the extraterrestrial being Zhao Guiyu's words were not all true. Chapter 9:18. This matter is of great importance. Let's contact our respective heads of state and discuss it together. Entering the conference room, Chenhua said solemnly. Okay. Although no one knew what Chenhua had talked about with the extraterrestrial beings, out of trust and respect for Chenhua, the godfather of science, they believed that Chenhua would not speak without thinking. Soon, the heads of the various planets who were waiting for the results of today's negotiations were all connected. Before this, the other heads of state had also received information from the head of Longhua planet and knew that Chenhua had contacted the extraterrestrial beings alone in advance. Therefore, everyone was looking forward to what Chenhua's so-called bargaining chip was. Professor Chen, it's good that you came out safely. What did you find? Longhua Planet Yuan asked. Previously, when we were discussing in the meeting, I did not express my opinion because there were still many things that were unclear. Those who advocated compromise accounted for the vast majority. Only a few advocated forcible suppression. I know that compromising is the only choice we have to make. The extraterrestrial beings are too strong and terrifying. One of them has the power to destroy a small planet. If there are 1, 2, 10, dozens, or even hundreds of them, we might be able to suppress and kill them. But they are a star area that is countless times more powerful than our Milky Way star area. If there are hundreds, thousands, or even more powerful beings, it might be the end of our Milky Way star area. We can't afford to lose. We have to compromise. That's right, Professor Chen. Compared to them, we're like ants. If we don't surrender, we will perish, sigh. If there is a glimmer of hope, who would be willing to compromise? I would rather die than be humiliated. Humans, whether it is us or the extraterrestrial beings, have the root of greed. I don't believe that they have no interest in our Sky River sector. A marshal who fiercely advocated forcible suppression did not expect Chenhua to bring up this dispute again. He immediately seized the opportunity to speak up. To everyone's surprise, Chenhua, who had not expressed his opinion, nodded slightly at the marshal at this moment. Then he immediately looked at the heads of state and military and said, "Everyone, listen to this recording first." The recording began with Chenhua playing the little nurse Lu Hui's narration and ended with Chenhua saying goodbye for the first time. The beginning and the end were removed, but no trace could be seen. This was a complete conversation. There was no holy light blessing, Daoist scripture, or Buddhist scripture. There was also no promise to return to the extraterrestrial beings after saying goodbye for the first time. These were all carefully laid out by Chenhua, who had analyzed all kinds of possibilities beforehand. He didn't want to sacrifice his son, nor did he want to become a sinner of the Sky River sector. Therefore, before he had a plan, he couldn't expose his son. He had to leave some leeway for his next move. Good. This is great. Professor Chen, I didn't expect you to find a clue to the immortal fate. Leaving the Sky River sector to become a cultivator. Professor Chen, are you sure you want to go? Immortal fate is actually so precious. No wonder they value it so much. This can indeed be used as a bargaining chip in our negotiations. As long as we hand over the immortal opportunity, perhaps we can really resolve this crisis. Everyone immediately started discussing. But Chenhua ceaselessly shook his head and declined to comment. Greed. Did you see that? His greedy nature was revealed without a doubt. I absolutely did not believe what he said. He also doesn't believe that the others will agree with him. They are not a group at all. They are all here to fight for the immortal opportunity. The marshal who strongly advocated suppression said again. I don't believe it either. At this time, Chenhua finally spoke. Marshal Mu is right. 112 of them are not a group. They are all here for the immortal opportunity. Fighting for it is inevitable. No one can represent all of them. However, from what this extraterrestrial being called Zhao Guyu said, we can deduce a few things. First, the immortal opportunity is extremely important to them. It's so important that they won't hesitate even if they have to pay with their lives. Second, we killed more than 10 people in the first group. The remaining people were captured by us because of the exhaustion of their energy and have been imprisoned for 10 years. The extraterrestrial beings who came later hid in the Sky River sector. Why didn't we save them? Everyone has seen how terrifying their abilities are before their energy consumption. If they really want to save them, how can we stop them? There is only one reason. They don't want to save them. If they save one, they will have one more competitor. Third, they will never send the news back. Although we don't understand their so-called divine power, it must be limited by distance. In addition, the immortal opportunity is important. No one will attract competitors. Otherwise, during these 10 years, there would have been extraterrestrial beings more powerful than them. Hearing Qianhua's words, everyone frowned and pondered. Up until now, the information we have obtained from Zhao Guiyu is independent. The other extraterrestrial beings don't know. Now, I hope that the heads of state and marshals will also use this recording of the immortal opportunity to test the reactions of the other extraterrestrial beings. The premise is that they must be tortured into a state like Zhao Guiyu's, unable to use any divine power. Professor Chen, what's the point of doing this? To understand more about them. Asking a tiger for its skin, can compromise really solve the problem? The Sky River sector is our home. But if it becomes a home where the other party wantonly tramples and humiliates generation after generation, what's the point? We don't have their superpowers, but we have the strongest battleships that are faster than them. We also have weapons stronger than their divine power. The only thing we are lacking is that we are unable to monitor them and their own nimbleness. We can't save all of humanity, but our well-stocked battleship army can take all of our natural and semi-natural elites into the vast Milky Way to find a new sector and rebuild our home. Yes, it's better to escape than drag out an ignoble existence and be trampled on generation after generation as slaves. Why didn't we think of this before? Professor Chen is right. Why should we defend the Sky River sector? Our huge fleet is our mobile base. Even if we can't find a paradise, it's better to settle down in the 4 seas than drag out an ignoble existence. Yes, all of our advanced facilities are in the form of base battleships. If all of us leave, the losses won't be too great. As long as the natural people can be saved, we don't care about other factors, let alone the semi-natural people. Qianhua's words were immediately echoed by many people. The complex of being unable to leave their homeland made all of them think about escaping from the Sky River sector. Of course, it was also because they had never encountered a matter of life and death for the entire sector. Of course, this is the last resort. If we can catch all of the other party's people in the Sky River sector, maybe we don't have to leave at all. Qianhua said. Chapter 9:19. Professor Chen, what do you mean? But wait. Outwit. When we interrogated the extraterrestrial life form Zhao Guiyu, he casually recited a few words about the immortal fate, which made us think of the Daoist scripture and the Buddhist scripture. Based on what he said, I used the words of the Daoist scripture and the Buddhist scripture and made some slight changes. I was able to trick Zhao Guiyu into believing that it was the immortal fate. In that case, I could even trick other extraterrestrial life forms. After all, they didn't know that Zhao Guiyu had told us about the immortal fate. Professor Chen, you mean to use the fake immortal opportunity to lure the enemy out? That's right. There are still 73 of them hiding in the Sky River sector. With their magical abilities, we won't be able to find them even if they pretend to be people of the Sky River sector. So, the only way to find them is to make them appear themselves. We only need to spread the news of the immortal opportunity in another way throughout the Sky River sector. I believe that none of them can resist the temptation. As long as we lure them to a specific area, it's time for us to catch them all in one fell swoop. Good. Very good. Professor Chen, you're really amazing. Marshal, you flatter me. It's not that I'm amazing. It's just that we were all frightened by the enemy's strength from the beginning. Deep in our hearts, we gave up resisting, or rather, we didn't even think about how to wipe them out. Otherwise, who here wouldn't have thought of such a simple trick? Qianhua said, shaking his head slightly. He wasn't being modest. It was the truth. If it didn't involve his son and he didn't have to take into account righteousness, he would have chosen to compromise and try. Of course, we have to prepare for both eventualities. I suggest that from now on, all the vital planets and bases in the Sky River sector focus on building simplified battleships to ensure speed, defense, and carrying space. Once there's an accident, we'll carry out the final plan and evacuate. Heads of state and marshals, what do you think? I agree. I support it. This is the best way. I support it. Chen Hua's proposal instantly received the approval of everyone present. No one really wanted to be trampled on and submit. Chen Hua's analysis was very persuasive and reasonable. The worst-case scenario was to abandon the Sky River sector and find a new home. This was enough for them to take the risk. Unfortunately, none of them had thought of leaving the Sky River sector before. On the same day, Chen Hua and Fan Zhen left on a private battleship and headed for Dragon Radiance Planet. Before Chen Hao left, the director of Longhua Sanatorium had used his authority to arrange for the nurse, Lu Hui, and her cousin, Lu Qian, to stay by Chen Hao's side 24 hours a day. He said that Chen Hao's parents were coming back for an inspection, so there must not be any problems. In reality, the purpose was to temporarily isolate the two of them from the outside world. That was because, on the same day, the #1 media in the entire Milky Way sector reported a mysterious and bizarre incident during prime time. On planet 2046, a talking stone had appeared. No human could get close to it. They could only hear its chanting from afar. It sounded like thousands of people were chanting Buddhist scriptures and Taoist scriptures at the same time. There was also a faint but prominent voice among the chanting. The scriptures were slightly different. The news reported the loud chanting. At the same time, the host explained that the weak voice could not be recorded and could only be heard on the spot. The host repeated the scriptures that the voice was chanting. If Lu Hui had seen this news, she would have been very surprised. The content that the host repeated was exactly the same as what she heard from Chen Hao. Are my parents coming to see me? It's been 10 years. For example, Chen Hao, who had been in a coma for 10 years, had not received any news about his parents. Now, his powerful soul perception could already extend to a radius of 1,000,000 li. However, his parents were clearly not within this range. Otherwise, as long as he wanted to, he would be able to see them at any time. He knew very well what his parents were busy with. Similarly, he knew his own condition. It was understandable that his parents did not come to see him or send him any news. What news would a living dead want? Who would know that he missed his parents? My chanting was reported. Lu Hui and Lu Qian could not see or hear anything. However, Chen Hao's divine consciousness could easily obtain all the information from the outside world. He was a little surprised when Lu Hui was called away by the dean to give her a task. Since then, his mind had been locked onto the dean's every move. He also found out that everything was arranged by his father. What's the reason? Obviously, my father leaked this information. Could it be related to extraterrestrial life? In the past 10 years, his parents had been dedicated to the study of extraterrestrial life. At this time, his mysterious scriptures were broadcasted, which made Chen Hao think of a possibility. After all, he had long judged that he might be related to extraterrestrial life. This was because he felt very familiar with the supernatural powers and laws. In the last call between the dean and his father, Chen Hao confirmed that his parents would return. He also confirmed that Lu Hui and Lu Qian could not leave his room for a moment. This was to prevent the news from spreading. During the call, his father told the dean to keep everything a secret. This was a matter of life and death in the Sky River sector, which meant that it was related to extraterrestrial life. Unfortunately, Chen Hao's information was limited. This was all he could think of. Immortal fate. Isn't this the scripture that the immortal fate chanted? It's immortal fate. It's definitely immortal fate. Immortal fate. Planet 2046. I must get it. Finally, there's news. Damn it. The others must have seen the report too. I must hurry. After the mysterious incident was broadcasted by the major vital planets media, the extraterrestrial life hidden among the humans in the Sky River sector almost immediately saw the report and believed that it was the immortal fate that they were looking for. Just as Chen Hua speculated one by one, They quietly went to planet 2046. Of course, most of them had already replaced the original residents as official citizens of the Sky River sector. In order to avoid being monitored and save energy, they used the Sky River sector's aircrafts to go there. At the same time, the Alliance's military also sent out elite troops to contact the other imprisoned extraterrestrial life. They hoped to get more information. Of course, the layout of Planet 2046 was the first to be started. Honey, fortunately, you are here. Otherwise, I would have personally sent Hao into the tiger's mouth. Well, don't think so much. Everything is fine now, isn't it? Honey, can this operation really wipe out the extraterrestrial life? There's a lot of hope. I've done my duty. The rest is up to fate. I promised you that I would live for you and our son for the rest of my life. It's time for us to leave. Chapter 920. Fanjin was shocked and looked at Chenhua in confusion. Leave her to where? Outside the Sky River sector. Chenhua stared at the void through the transparent window of the private battleship and said in a deep voice, "Our only son must not be allowed to sleep for the rest of his life. We originally hoped that the extraterrestrial beings could wake our son up and let him return to the world he belongs to, but now, it's impossible. So, we have to think of a way. Our son may be the so-called cultivator, immortal fate, and Dao marks of the extraterrestrial beings, who gave birth to his spiritual wisdom and was reborn as a human. But in the end he is still our flesh and blood." Hao's inability to wake up is related to the heaven and earth spirit chi mentioned by the extraterrestrial beings. Perhaps, as long as we can find a star sector with heaven and earth spirit chi, Hao will naturally wake up. Is this possible? In the vast starry sky, our Sky River sector has explored for hundreds of millions of years, but we have only found a few planets with life. Do we have any other way? We hope that the Sky River sector can successfully survive this crisis, but there is no way to wake Hao up here. We still have to go out. If we can't survive this crisis, I will become the first target of the extraterrestrial beings. We have to leave, and even the entire Sky River sector will have to flee. Well, although the starry sky is vast, don't forget that the scriptures Hao recited are very similar to Daoist and Buddhist scriptures. I have already retrieved all the information on the route of the Dragon Radiance star battleship. Perhaps there will be hope if we capture the star sectors around the Daoist and Buddhist scriptures. Chenhua's private battleship represented the most advanced in the Sky River sector. It flew at high speed in the void and quickly approached the Dragon Radiance star capital. 12 hours later, the huge battleship appeared directly above the Dragon Radiance star capital. Without any obstruction, it slowly landed in the huge battleship sanatorium. When Chenhua's battleship landed in the base of the sanatorium, a young man who was passing by the sanatorium looked up at the sky in surprise. When he saw the battleship's appearance and logo, the young man's eyes flashed with a trace of excitement. Chenhua naturally didn't notice. But what the young man didn't know was that when he appeared in the Dragon Radiance star capital, Chenhao had locked onto his aura. Brother Hua, sister-in-law. When the cabin door opened and Chenhua walked out of the battleship with Fanjin, the dean, who had been waiting at the deck door for a long time, immediately went up and shouted excitedly, "Brother, are you ready?" "I'm ready." There were no problems with the first 6. The compensation was in place, and the government's policy remained unchanged. They were exempted from the crimes of dereliction of duty and sexual assault, and all of them voluntarily handed over their children. However, Lu Kaier, who had just resigned, didn't agree to the operation no matter what. She said that for the sake of the child's natural health, she wanted to give birth to the child herself and accept any punishment. I had no choice but to scare her and say that if she didn't want the operation, she would have to leave Longhua Planet forever and follow you. Of course, I didn't reveal your identities. I didn't expect her to actually agree, and she even seemed to be quite happy. Lu Kaiya was the nurse Lu Hui who had replaced the special nurse. Since that was the case, there was no problem. He would just take her away. This is indeed better for the child. Brother Hua, what's so serious? Are you going somewhere? The life and death of the Milky Way domain is also a secret. It's better if you don't know. I'm only telling you to be ready at all times. Don't leave the sanatorium battleship. In these 2 days, it's best to bring all your family members to the sanatorium. Don't ask anything else. I'll leave this to you. Chen Hua stared at the director, who had a close relationship with him, and said in a deep voice. At the same time, he handed a chip to the director. Brother Hua, what's this? Only the military can open the chip. After a month, if everything is calm, this chip will automatically destroy itself. If there are any changes, leave it to the military. What happened? Chen Hao could no longer stay calm at this time. First, in a short period of time, the director brought back 6 children of almost the same age and the special nurse who had only left him for a few days. Needless to say, Chen Hao could sense that the 6 children were the crystallization of the previous special nurses who had sex with him many times. Not long after, he sensed that extraterrestrial life had appeared in Longhua Planet's capital, and not long after, his parents arrived in an advanced battleship. If that was all, it would be fine, but the extraterrestrial life had targeted his father's private battleship. This made Chen Hao, the living dead, anxious like an ant on a hot pan, but there was nothing he could do. It was obvious that his parents were going to take him, his flesh and blood, and the special nurse who was pregnant with his flesh and blood away, and they were going to take his father's private battleship. And the extraterrestrial life obviously coveted the battleship, so what would happen next? Chen Hao was anxious, but he couldn't even remind his parents. He was bedridden, but he knew everything in the world. For the first time, he had an incomparably strong desire to wake up, to really wake up. But no matter how much he struggled, most of his mind was still immersed in chanting the profound scripture. Not even a ripple could be seen in the eternal and unchanging rhythm of the scripture. Professor Chen. You are Professor Chen? You are Mrs. Chen. After Chen Hao's 6 children and Lu Kai were sent into Chen Hua's private battleship, Chen Hua and his wife, under the guidance of the director, came to Chen Hao's room. As soon as they entered the room, the young nurses, Lu Hui and Lu Qian, opened their eyes wide and said with incomparable excitement, Chen Hua, the current godfather of science in the Sky River sector. Who didn't know him? Who didn't know him? Even the ruler of Longhua Planet didn't have as much influence as Chen Hua in the Sky River sector. Lu Hui and Lu Qian had long known that Chen Hao's parents were definitely important figures. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to live in the Longhua Planet Sanatorium's battleship base. Lu Qian, Lu Hui, hello. I didn't expect you to be more beautiful in person than in image. Fan Zhen looked at the pretty Lu Qian and Lu Hui with bright eyes and said with a smile, Madam, you know us? I really didn't expect you to be Chen Hao's parents. I'm so excited. The lively Lu Hui didn't even think about it and said excitedly. Lu Qian, on the other hand, blushed slightly and was a little restrained. Lu Qian, Lu Hui, I'm very happy to meet you. We are going to take Hao away now. I wonder, are you willing to leave with us? Of course we are. We are Chen Hao's exclusive bodyguards, so we naturally have to follow. Lu Qian also replied. The departure I'm talking about might be for a very, very long time, or we might never return to Longhua Planet. Chen Hua directly said. Ah. Lu Hui and Lu Qian were slightly surprised. Chapter 9:21. I'll give you half an hour to think about it. You can contact your families before you make a decision. Before I came, the director had already negotiated with your families and they agreed. This is a serious matter and time is of the essence. I'm sorry, Chen Hua said again. He and Fan Zhen sincerely hoped that the 2 of them would follow them, especially the young nurse, Lu Hui. Lu Hui had a special ability to hear voices that only extraterrestrial beings could hear. This might help Chen Hao in the future. However, Chen Hua's plan had come too quickly. Otherwise, Lu Hui and Lu Qian might have ended up like the other nurses in 2 years. That would have been much easier to handle. Chen Hua couldn't force them. Time was of the essence, so he could only offer great benefits and persuade their families first. Chen Hua had already asked the director to make an offer that was difficult to refuse. Now, it was up to the two of them to decide. Little Qian, little Hui, I like you very much. I hope you can come with us. I will wake up. I won't hide it from you. Because of the situation before, his father chose the two of you as his daughters-in-law. Fan Zhen, who had already reached the bed and was gently stroking Chen Hao's face, looked at Lu Qian and Lu Hui expectantly. Fan Zhen said this because she had watched a lot of videos of Lu Qian and Chen Hao. As for Lu Hui, who had just arrived, she might not be affected much, but Lu Qian and Lu Hui were very close. Lu Qian's decision would naturally affect Lu Hui. On this point, Fan Zhen was also very proud of her son. What was the use of being handsome when he was a zombie? However, he still inexplicably attracted girls. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caused so many nurses to fall for him. This was inconceivable. Then, the director brought Lu Qian and Lu Hui to an office where they could communicate with each other in 3D, leaving them some space alone. What should I do? What should I do? Chen Hao, who couldn't move at all, was extremely anxious. Although he wanted to see his parents again, at this moment, he wished that they hadn't come back. The conversation just now made Chen Hao realize how serious the situation was. His parents wanted to take him and the flesh and blood they had left behind under such circumstances. Obviously, they had no choice but to leave. Moreover, it was a desperate situation for the entire Sky River sector. Otherwise, with his father's status, he wouldn't have made such a decision. All of the signs indicated that he was leaving the Milky Way planetary system. But now, they were being targeted by extraterrestrial beings. Chen Hao knew very well how dangerous these extraterrestrial life forms hiding in various parts of the Sky River sector were to the ordinary people of the Sky River sector like his father. More than 10 kilometers away from the warship base of Longhua Sanatorium. Although it's not a large battleship, it's definitely a very powerful one. This model has never appeared on the official website of the Sky River sector before. The symbol is also the #1 private battleship of the Longhua Academy of Sciences. It belongs to the godfather of science, Chen Hua. Then it must be that this big shot had arrived here. Controlling Chen Hua, controlling his personal battleship, I will be able to reach 2046 without any hindrance. The godfather of science. Almost all the advanced capabilities of the battleships were developed by him, so how could his personal battleship be inferior? The young man, who looked like an ordinary person, was more than 10 kilometers away from the sanatorium. As he looked at the sky above the sanatorium, his eyes became more and more excited. He was confident that the moment the battleship opened its hatch, he would be able to quietly sneak into the battleship and take control of Chen Hua. Although it would consume some energy, it was absolutely worth it. Phew. What is he doing here? It's a pity that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is extinct, and my senses are limited to a very small range. Don't stay for too long, I can't afford to wait. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. Lu Qian and Lu Hui walked out with tears on their faces. Professor Chen, madam, we are willing to go with you. The two of them learned from their families that Chen Hua had given them an astonishing amount of compensation. However, their family background and status were not bad. So what if the compensation was greater? The real reason why their families agreed to it was because of Chen Hua's name. Okay, thank you. When I said forever, I don't necessarily mean forever. Maybe one day we will come back. Let's go. After Chen Hua finished speaking, he and Fan Zhen pushed Chen Hao, who couldn't move at all, towards the deck along the open passage. Lu Hui and Lu Qian collected themselves and quickly ran to Chen Hua and Fan Zhen's side to take over. Brother Hua, see you again. Take care. Brother Hua. Although I don't know what will happen, I hope to see you again. I hope so too. Take care. Remember what I told you before. Okay. Chen Hua and the director hugged each other tightly. Together, they pushed Chen Hao toward the battleship. No. No. No one could hear Chen Hao's consciousness. At this moment he was frantically shouting, trying to stop his parents. However, all his efforts were in vain. How did it feel to watch his parents and two beautiful nurses walk step by step into danger, but unable to do anything? Beep beep beep. Chen Hua activated his personal computer. Under the sunlight, the battleship shone with a silver glow. The hatch opened at a uniform speed. At the same time, the light shielding system of the sanatorium's battleship was activated simultaneously to facilitate the departure of the battleship. Hiss! A ray of light that was completely beyond the range of human eyes suddenly flashed past the light detection of the sanatorium's battleship and Chen Hua's personal battleship. Ah! Chen Hao screamed with all his might. He screamed at the top of his lungs. He wanted to control his own body more than anything else. All this time, although he could not move, his powerful senses allowed him to see almost everything he wanted to know. After many failed attempts to control his body, he gave up. Although it was important to him, it was not urgent. After all, he had been unconscious most of the time. It was only in the last 2 years that he had been conscious more and more. But now, however, he had an incomparable desire, an intense desire to control his own body. At this moment, Chen Hao felt like he was fighting a deep nightmare. He was trying his best to gain control of his body. He failed again and again, and tried again and again. Unfortunately, his parents and the 2 nurses did not realize the danger that was about to befall them. They entered the battleship without changing their pace. At the same time, they didn't notice that Chen Hao's lips, which had been slightly opening and closing for 18 years, quietly closed the moment they entered the tunnel and started walking towards the battleship, and didn't move at all. The hatch slowly closed amidst the buzzing sound of the battleship's airflow. Immediately, a beam of light shot out and soared into the sky. Chapter 9:22. Sizzle! 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 At this moment, a dazzling light burst out from the battleship and turned into light ribbons, binding Chen Hua, Fan Zhen, Lu Qian, and Lu Hui easily. Under the astonished gazes of Chen Hua and the other 3, a tall and slender figure appeared in front of them with an excited and complacent smile on his face. Extraterrestrial life form. From the moment he found out that his son might be the so-called immortal destiny of the extraterrestrial beings, every possibility, every action, even every word, and every result was in his hands. Chen Hua, who had finally lost his composure at this moment. Chen Hua, the chief scientist of the Sky River sector, known as the godfather of science and the strongest scientist in history. Very good. Very good. Your soul is indeed much stronger than ordinary people's. The blessing of holy light? The excited extraterrestrial life form suddenly looked at the frightened and pale Fan Zhen. What? Innate spiritual body. There is an innate spiritual body? Then he looked at the little nurse, Lu Hui, with an even more surprised expression. Very good. I didn't expect that there would be someone with the blessing of holy light and an innate spiritual body in this sector where the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is extinct. I, Li Mubai, finally have great luck. Li Mubai was shocked. He looked at Fan Zhen again and said, "Where did your blessing of holy light come from? Tell me." Sizzle! Fan Zhen screamed. Li Mubai grabbed at Fan Zhen, and Fan Zhen floated uncontrollably to Li Mubai's side. He grabbed her chin and hung her in the air. "What do you want to do? Don't mess around," Chen Hua said angrily. Lu Qian and Lu Hui were trembling all over, and their faces were full of fear. They had never seen such a thing that was completely beyond their knowledge. What was the extraterrestrial life form that Chen Hua mentioned? "Tell me. Put her down, I'll tell you." Chen Hua's frightened eyes flickered several times, and his body trembled. He bit his lips until they bled, but his voice became steady and cold. "Hubby, you can't say it." Although Fan Zhen was frightened and flustered, she firmly said at this moment. She was very clearly aware that she would definitely die if she fell into the hands of these xenorace beings. But since the other party hadn't noticed his son's abnormality, he couldn't say anything. Death was still better than the so-called refinement of the extraterrestrial beings. Pa! Li Mubai slapped Fan Zhen's face, leaving a clear handprint on her pale face. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and half of her teeth fell out. The crisp sound of the slap caused the sober Chen Hao's heart to bleed. Ever since Chen Hao was pregnant, he had always felt his mother's deep love. She had been with him for 3 years of prenatal education, and for the first 8 years of his life, whether he could hear or not, his mother had been with him every day. She had talked to him and worried about his strange illness, but at this moment he could only watch helplessly as his mother was being bullied. He couldn't even move an inch. Bastard! If you dare to touch her again, we would rather die than submit. If it wasn't for the fact that searching for souls consumes too much energy, I wouldn't need you to tell me that, Li Mubai said coldly. However, although he said so, he waved his hand and threw Fan Zhen, who was bound by the immortal light, to the ground. He turned his head and looked at Chenhua, whose eyes were filled with anger and hatred, and said, "Say it. My patience is limited. Also, give me the control of the battleship first." That's impossible. This is the most advanced battleship in the entire Sky River sector. The battleship's AI is an unnatural life that is bound to my brain for life. Other than me, no one can control it. Oh? It's really powerful. That's simple. Lock onto Planet 2046 for me first. Don't blame me for not reminding you. If you don't want to die in my hands, don't play any tricks. Although I don't know much about your technology, I have more or less understood it in these few years. If anything goes wrong, all of you will die. You are doing this for that magical stone? Chenhua looked calmer. Fan Zhen had fainted at this moment, which made Chenhua feel a little relieved. But you are indeed a godfather. Tell me, what's the matter with the holy light blessing on her body? That's not right. You shouldn't know what the holy light blessing means. Why didn't she let me say it? Isn't the holy light blessing the mark of a person who has achieved the Tao? Why don't we understand it? You will pay a heavy price for what you have done today. Chen Hua said coldly, and his expression became calmer. We are outside working for your leader. Can you afford to offend him? My leader? How come I don't know that I have a leader in Sky River sector? Zhao Giyu. You better let us go immediately. Leaving the battleship and delaying Mr. Zhao's business, he will never let you go. Chen Hua said sternly. When he first met Zhao Giyu had suspected that the holy light blessing on his body was related to their people. So, at this moment, there was no problem in pushing the holy light blessing on Fan Zhen to Zhao Giyu. Zhao Giyu? The Zhao Giyu who has become a prisoner of Sky River sector? Tell me, what's your relationship with him? It's nothing. He saved my wife's life with the holy light blessing. I'm just working for him. So, he has come out? Li Mubai frowned slightly. Although he looked calm, he was very surprised. The holy light blessing on Fan Zhen was indeed something that only their people could do. However, Zhao Giyu was captured alive because he had exhausted his energy. How could he still have the ability to bless others? Zhao Giyu was very strong, and he was very scheming. He knew this very well. Perhaps, when he saw that there was no hope of escaping, he deliberately preserved his energy and deliberately allowed himself to be captured alive. Got it? Why don't you get out of here? Slap. Li Mubai did not hesitate at all. He slapped the arrogant Chenhua to the ground and spat out blood. Zhao Giyu is not here. Even if he is, you are just an ant and a dog. How dare you roar at me? Leader, do you really think he is our leader? Is he worthy? I am not as strong as him, and there are a few people who are stronger than me. However, it won't be long before I have the final say. No one can compete with me. Tell me, what does he want you to do? At this moment, Chen Hua covered his mouth, looking extremely frightened and trembling all over. He immediately lowered his head and said, I said, he promised me that he will take me and my family to a world where we can live forever and become like you. The condition is that we have to get him out of the military department. It had to be said that Xianxia was a real genius, an all-round genius. Chapter 923. If he had acted in a movie on Earth, he would definitely have won an Oscar award. The change from his arrogant appearance just now to his humble and fearful appearance now was so natural, there was no need to mention Fan Zhen, who had passed out. Lu Hui and Lu Qian, who were awake, had no idea what was going on. However, based on the previous conversation and the fact that Xianxia had taken them away, the two of them vaguely felt that Xianxia was betraying the Sky River Space Zone to save the extraterrestrial life for the so-called immortality and terrifying abilities. Their gazes towards Xianxia became cold and indifferent. The image of their idol collapsed. He will give up the immortal opportunity? That's right. A prisoner can't even escape, and his energy is almost exhausted. He has lost the qualification to fight for the immortal opportunity. I think he wants to use you to escape, restore his energy, or call for reinforcements, right? Sometimes being strong and confident is not a good thing. I am wise and not greedy. 50 years ago, before I caught up with him, I released a strand of my primordial spirit and returned to report to my master. Even if my master took the immortal opportunity for himself, I could still get a generous reward. Li Mubai said in a good mood. He didn't know that his words had set off a storm in Xianhua's heart. What did it mean to separate a strand of his primordial spirit to report to his master 50 years ago? This was the most worrying thing in the Sky River Star region. Originally, it was not supposed to happen, but now it was obviously impossible. A chill ran down Xianhua's spine. What could he do even if he had calculated everything and advanced step by step? In the face of absolute power, everything seemed to be in vain. Now, you have to work for me, Li Mubai. If you do well, I can also take you and your family to the chaotic universe. I'll let you all become cultivators. Especially this little beauty. Li Mubai understood the situation and immediately felt relieved. His eyes were filled with greed and excitement as he looked at Lu Hui. The little nurse, Lu Hui, was an innate spiritual body, whose spiritual root originated from the soul mark. Although this kind of person was not as good as the innate Daoist embryo, it was extremely rare. She was naturally close to the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Once she started to cultivate, the speed of controlling power would be extremely amazing. More importantly, she was born in the last days star region, where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was extinct. This kind of spiritual root was definitely an extremely powerful existence. Otherwise, with the taint of the acquired aura, it should have disappeared long ago. If he could refine such a soul, even if he was in the Daoist Golden Wonderland, he would still be able to reap an unimaginable harvest. What do you want? Seeing Li Mubai's excited, greedy, and perverted gaze walk towards her step by step, the young nurse, Lu Hui, finally said with a trembling voice. Unfortunately, she was bound by the immortal light and couldn't move at all. Don't come over. Bastard, don't touch my cousin. Li Mubai, do you really think you have complete control over us? If you dare to molest her, then we'll die together. Right at this moment, Xianxia suddenly spoke in a stern voice. Die together? Li Mubai turned his head to look at Xianxia, frowning. That's right. Only I can control my battleship. I only need one command, and the AI will start the self-destruct sequence. Don't think that just because my battleship is small, it is weak. The most powerful battleship in the Sky River sector is my personal battleship. All the most advanced technology and the most powerful weapons that are not yet ready to be widely used are included in my aircraft. Once it self-destructs, not to mention you, even if all the extraterrestrial beings join forces, they will still be annihilated. Xianxia looked straight at Li Mubai and said fearlessly. This was definitely not an alarmist talk. On the contrary, when Xianxia said this sentence, he had already issued several commands through the symbiotic connection between his brain and the AI. The immortal light only bound his body and even his soul, but it couldn't bind his consciousness. The AI technology in the Sky River sector was already very mature, and the mass production of non-humans was the best proof. Good. Looking at Chenhua, who didn't even try to dodge, Li Mubai said viciously. He removed his evil claws from Lu Hui's beautiful face and said, Li Mubai, the dignified Daoist Jingxian, was actually threatened by an ant like you, and I have to admit that. Amazing, amazing. It seems that the technology of the Sky River sector is really worth learning from. I can leave them alone. But now, you must go to Planet 2046 as soon as possible. I still have conditions. Fuck your mother. Then let's die together? Chenhua's eyes were suddenly full of provocation. It seemed that he was quite determined to die together with them if there was a disagreement. Say it. Let all of them go. I'll go with you alone. Professor, the development of the situation was completely beyond Lu Hui and Lu Qian's imagination. Chenhua, whose image had just collapsed in their hearts, was now willing to take the risk alone for all of them. That determined and calm look exuded a sense of awe-inspiring justice. Although they still didn't understand what was going on with Professor Chen, at this moment, the two knew that perhaps they had misunderstood Professor Chen. Don't even think about it. Do you think I'm an idiot? Li Mubai said angrily, do you believe that I won't crush them one by one? Do you really think I'm afraid of death? Li Mubai was not stupid. If these people were here, even if Chenhua wanted to detonate the warship, he would only do so when he was forced into a desperate situation. Otherwise, he would never do so. But if he let these people go, it would be different. Without the scruples of their relatives, the possibility of them choosing to die together with him would be greater. Most importantly, if he let these people go, the news would inevitably leak out. At that time, he would become the target of public criticism in this warship. What was the difference between that and poking a hornet's nest? Therefore, at this moment, he must be even more ruthless. Li Mubai and Chenhua looked at each other. After a full half-minute, Chenhua sighed in his heart. Beep, beep, beep. Then a prompt suddenly sounded. Master, all life status scans have been completed. If there is any abnormality, the self-detonation program will be automatically executed. Did you hear that? It's fine if you don't let them go, but if there is any abnormality in any of our life status, the self-detonation program will be automatically executed. Li Mubai was slightly stunned, and then he immediately seemed relieved and said, You're really ruthless. I won't touch you. Just as the word you came out, Li Mubai's expression didn't change in the slightest. Suddenly, with an unimaginable speed, a bright light beam shot out from between his eyebrows and directly penetrated Chenhua's forehead. You're the motherfucking monster. At this moment, the second half of Li Mubai's sentence came out. At this moment, a loud sound came from Chenhua's mind. His entire perception of the outside world disappeared. A terrifying pressure directly imprisoned his consciousness, causing a temporary blankness. You really think I can't do anything to you? Idiot, I just don't want to waste my strength. You don't know what's good for you. I'll first imprison your soul and control your consciousness. I don't believe that I can't figure out your so-called symbiotic brain. Li Mubai's voice drifted in the warship, but his body didn't move at all. Even his lips didn't open and close. Moreover, it seemed to be coming from Chenhua's body. Professor, you demon, let go of Professor. Lu Hui and Lu Qian screamed. Their minds were on the verge of collapse. What kind of monster was this? Even though they didn't understand the laws of divine power, Li Mubai's words made them understand that he was trying to control Professor Chen's soul. If Professor Chen's soul didn't belong to him, could he still be alive? Dead. At the same time, Chen Hao, who had been struggling madly, trying again and again, failed and tried again and again, roared hysterically in his mind with grief, despair, and anger. Chen Hao was different from Lu Hui and Lu Qian. Even though his consciousness was awake and he hadn't come into contact with terms such as imprison the soul and control the consciousness, he naturally understood what the other party was trying to do. In fact, even if Li Mubai didn't say anything, Qianhua could tell that it was Li Mubai's soul or primordial spirit just by sensing the fluctuations of the light that bloomed between his eyebrows. At the same time, the mysterious fluctuations emitted from it clearly appeared in Qianhao's mind, allowing Qianhao to understand what the other party was trying to do. Unfortunately, no matter how crazy he was, how hard he tried, and how unwilling he was, he still couldn't wake up. The ending seemed to be destined, but, with Qianhao's hysterical screams filled with despair, anger, and unwillingness in his mind, an imperceptible light flashed between Qianhao's eyebrows. Chapter 925. Colorless, soundless, formless, and formless light. Only Qianhao himself felt the space between his eyebrows twitch slightly. At this moment, Qianhua, whose consciousness was completely blank, suddenly felt as if he was situated in the boundless and vast night sky. His body was as light as a feather as he floated in the night sky. It was pitch black, and he couldn't even see his own fingers. Anyone who was in this environment would feel an indescribable panic. However, all the pressure and pain from before had completely disappeared, and the heavens and earth were completely silent. Am I dead? Qianhua stared blankly at the pitch-black space around him and muttered to himself in a dejected and lonely manner. In the end, it's still futile. Is this the soul? Death is actually conscious. Science is really ridiculous. The things I've been researching all my life have been wrong from the beginning. Extraterrestrial life, human soul and body, are the greatest treasures. Just when Qianhua was sighing with endless regret, he was suddenly shocked. A ray of light, extremely bright light. Qianhua couldn't describe this light because it wasn't light that could be seen with the naked eye. It seemed to be a light that illuminated everything in the world in the soul. If it was a cultivator with profound cultivation, he would naturally know that this was the light of nature. The formless light of nature could also be called the light of the great Tao. However, this wasn't the reason why he was surprised. He was already dead, and everything had become nothing. What else was there to be surprised about? Perhaps it wouldn't be long before his remaining consciousness, or even his soul, would dissipate into the endless void. What really surprised him was that he saw a figure in this bright light, riding on the light. The figure was slender, handsome, and had eyes like stars. His face was like jade, and his whole body exuded a majestic aura of supremacy. It was like a Buddha, like an immortal descending to the mortal world. Most importantly, this figure, except for the aura and temperament, looked exactly the same as his son who hadn't woken up for 18 years. Professor Chen, hello. The young man smiled and said, For you. Qianhua was so shocked that he couldn't describe it. The other party's address was obviously not his son. No, his son hadn't woken up at all. How could he know that he was his father? Not to mention that he was Professor Chen. Qianhao. Qianhao? My son? No, I'm not your son. The other me is your son. I guess I can be considered your son. Qianhao smiled and said, Looking at you is like looking at the past me. You are not inferior to the past me. It's a pity that I wasn't as scientific as you were. Of course, your Sky River sector doesn't have the mysteries of Earth and the legacies of Buddhism and Taoism. Qianhao's words made even Qianhua, who was extremely intelligent, dizzy. He completely short-circuited and had no idea what Qianhao was talking about. What do you mean by another me, and what do you mean by the past me? Professor Chen, forget it, I'll just call you father. It's not easy to have a biological father. You deserve my respect. What the hell are you talking about? Qianhua patted his forehead and asked in confusion. With his super high IQ, he really couldn't understand Qianhao's words. What did he mean by it's not easy to have a biological father? Father, you'll understand in the future. It's a bit complicated to explain. Now I'll help you deal with that damn guy. Your son, the other me, is anxious to death. Fortunately, my soul residence has been condensed and is about to come to an end. Otherwise, the loss would be huge. I'm really cute. Chen Hao said with a relaxed smile on his face. Cute. Chen Hao was naturally describing the other him. Chen Hao knew everything about the other him. However, the other him didn't know anything about the real Chen Hao. The other him could be said to be a life that was completely born in this world. His sole origin, flesh, blood, hair, and skin all came from his parents, Chen Hua and Fan Zhen. The only difference was that Chen Hao and the other him's sole origin were naturally connected in the mother's womb. However, Chen Hao's original body had unilaterally cut off all memories and consciousness. If the Shao clan's ancestor knew about this, he would definitely be so angry that he would vomit blood, tremble in fear, and be so envious that he would die. A true 9 lives. Although Chen Hao only gave birth to a second life, it was an existence that fused his own Tao, as well as the true essence of the 3,000 great Tao and the supreme Buddhist scriptures. This kind of 9 lives profound technique could definitely be considered a transformation and sublimation of the Shao clan's ancestors' 9 lives profound technique. In the future, when he broke through the limit of 9 lives, the chances of cultivating 10 lives against the heavens would be tens or hundreds of times higher. Perhaps he wouldn't even need to find a shortcut to achieve 10 lives against the heavens. This was definitely not something the Shao clan's ancestors' 9 lives profound technique could compare to. Chen Hao casually pointed his finger, and endless immortal light turned into a bright light shield that protected Chen Hua's soul imprint. Although it took a long time to describe, in fact, Chen Hao and Chen Hua's pure consciousness communication only lasted for a moment. That was when Li Mubai's primordial spirit invaded Chen Hua's mind and shouted that he wanted to control Chen Hua's soul. Qi. The bright light that connected Li Mubai and Chen Hua's eyebrows was originally about to be cut off. After all, Li Mubai of the Daoist Golden Wonderland had an extremely powerful soul. As long as he wasn't afraid of wasting energy, he could easily control Chen Hua. Even if Chen Hua's soul was much stronger than many mortals, he was still immortal. How strong could he be? Therefore, Li Mubai didn't need to use his entire soul to enter. However, just as he was about to cut it off, a terrifying devouring power suddenly rose from Chen Hua's forehead. Ah! At this moment, Li Mubai let out an extremely terrified scream. Not only did the light that connected with Chen Hua not cut off, but it also instantly increased by countless times, becoming even brighter and more majestic. Li Mubai didn't even have time to resist. At the moment when he didn't have time to resist, his entire soul, along with all his energy, completely entered Chen Hua's mind. Of course, what really entered was Chen Hao's soul. Possession and soul refining, compared to Chen Hao? Not to mention being in the same realm, even if he was 1 realm higher than Chen Hao, he definitely wouldn't be Chen Hao's opponent. Chen Hao could definitely be called a possession expert, a professor. His incomparably powerful soul, coupled with the extreme Tao spiritual cultivation, coupled with several soul battles that were beyond his realm, Li Mubai, who was in the same realm, wasn't even qualified to carry his shoes in front of him. Endless immortal light condensed into a mysterious and complicated soul seal, directly imprisoning Li Mubai's soul. At this moment, Li Mubai was both frightened and frightened. No matter what, he didn't expect such a terrible thing to happen. Chapter 926. For you. Almost instantly, Li Mubai judged that this was not something that Chen Hua could do. Otherwise, he would be crazy to play with him until now. Moreover, it was impossible for Chen Hua to have such a terrifying ability. Even he could not understand the mysterious runes at all. There is nothing wrong with pursuing the immortal fate. Killing innocent mortals and destroying a planet without blinking, you deserve to die. Oh, you don't seem to have done it. But you seem to be more shameless, despicable, and obscene than them. The most important thing is, you motherfucker, how dare you hit my mother? And you want to devour my beautiful little wife's spiritual root? And you want to control my father's soul? You deserve to die. No, death is too easy for you. I will refine your soul, keep your soul origin, and let you live a life worse than death. Chen Hao's mind moved, and he substituted his emotions into the state of the other him. The world suddenly opened up, and his state of mind changed instantly. The other him's anger, unwillingness, despair, pain, and other extreme emotions directly ignited in Qianhao's soul origin. Father, mother, they were all very smooth without the slightest barrier. Even the little nurse, Lu Hui, became a little wife. This was the main reason why Qianhao finally chose to call Qianhua father when he talked with Qianhua before. Because he was very clear that once he opened the seal between his soul and his other self's soul and really integrated, the other him would become the real him, the second him. His emotions were his own emotions, and they came from the influence of the soul origin. You are Qianhua's son? How is this possible? How is this possible? Humph, nothing is impossible. I am the immortal fate you are looking for. Enjoy it slowly. As Qianhao's voice fell, the mysterious runes that imprisoned Li Mubai's soul suddenly burned. Immediately, Li Mubai let out a scream that was more miserable than a pig being slaughtered. The majestic memory fragments were directly absorbed and organized by Qianhao's powerful soul. All kinds of memories that made Qianhao's blood boil in the chaotic world poured into Qianhao's mind and became his memories. These were all things that happened in Qianhua's soul palace. The little nurses, Lu Hui and Lu Qian, naturally couldn't see the appearance of Qianhao's soul. It was impossible for them to know that the living dead, Qianhao, was still lying motionless on the trolley. As for Qianhua and Li Mubai, the extraterrestrial life forms, after hearing Li Mubai's frightened scream, their eyes became hollow. They stood there motionlessly like statues. Fan Zhen was still unconscious. Only Lu Hui and Lu Qian looked at Qianhua anxiously. They were bound by Li Mubai's divine ability and couldn't move. At this moment, the outer cabin of the battleship was terrifyingly quiet. Professor! Professor! After a few minutes, there was still no change, causing Lu Hui and Lu Qian to shout, "Madam! Madam! Wake up! Wake up! You demon! You'll die a horrible death!" Unfortunately, whether it was calling Qianhua, Fan Zhen, or cursing Li Mubai, the three of them didn't have any reaction. Time slowly passed by. What should we do? What in the world happened? Little Hui, could that demon be controlling Professor's soul? Sister Qian Qian? I don't know. The demon cried out, as if there was an accident. Both Professor and his eyes are hollow. After a full hour, Lu Hui and Lu Qian, who were frightened as if they were having a nightmare, finally calmed down a little. They also felt that something was strange, so they spoke. Little Hui, quickly look. Qianhao, his lips aren't moving. Can't be. No way, no way, the demon didn't touch him at all. Lu Qian said in fear. He really isn't moving. Lu Hui's eyes widened in shock. The opening and closing of his lips was the symbol of the living dead, Qianhao's life. He was constantly moving. Now that he suddenly stopped moving, how could the two not be afraid? I'm fine, I'm fine. Everything's fine now. It's all in the past. Was that the majority of my mind? Qianhao's voice rang out in his mind. Unfortunately, Lu Qian and Lu Hui couldn't hear him. When Qianhao's true body's soul moved out, his second life's powerful perception clearly sensed the throbbing between his eyebrows. At the same time, he felt that his mind had been emptied. Not long after, a comforting feeling fused into his mind. At the same time, he could clearly sense what had happened. However, he couldn't hear the conversation between Qianhao's true body and Qianhua, but he could be sure that his father was safe. It was a confidence that came from the depths of his heart. Just like before, he firmly believed that if he woke up, he would be able to use the divine abilities of these extraterrestrial beings. The feeling of having two selves was indescribable. Perhaps a schizophrenic mental illness could understand a thing or two. The benevolent me, the adorable me. Pass? How can I pass? This is only the beginning. The thoughts of the second life didn't hinder Qianhao's true body at all. It's just one Li Mubai. There are still dozens, hundreds, and even more powerful existences to deal with. People like Li Mubai, who aren't strong, are actually the biggest scourge. Chen Hao's true body thought to himself as he quickly refined Li Mubai's soul force. Li Mubai's primordial spirit had sent a strand of his primordial spirit back to deliver the letter, but it definitely hadn't arrived yet. They found themselves in the deepest part of the Devil Abyss and regarded themselves as the immortal destiny. They chased after it for 230 years before entering the Sky River sector. In other words, 50 years ago, Li Mubai's strand of primordial spirit went back to deliver the letter. Even if the speed of the primordial spirit was much faster than the true body, it would take at least 60 to 70 years to cover the distance of 180 years of flight. When Li Mubai's master received the news and rushed over, even if it was in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, it would take at least 10 years. This added up to 70 to 80 years. In other words, it would take at least 20 to 30 years for Li Mubai's master to reach the Sky River sector. Moreover, it would take Daoist Jingxian 10 years to reach the barrier of the Sky River sector. The chaotic space was a place where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was extinct. This was also the reason why Li Mubai and the others didn't tear the space barrier to enter the chaotic space. Otherwise, as long as there was chaotic energy in the chaotic space, with their cultivation, they could absorb and refine it to recover to their peak state. Of course, the main reason was that they were fighting for the immortal destiny. Otherwise, they could just hijack a Sky River sector aircraft that didn't need to be driven by the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, tear the space barrier, and spend a few years to enter the chaotic space with chaotic energy. But who would dare to spend 10 to 20 years going back and forth? In that case, the immortal destiny would have been snatched away by others. He stopped in his tracks and pointed out a finger. In an instant, a dazzling and majestic aquamarine light condensed into a light screen that covered everyone present. Lu Qian and Lu Hui's screams came to an abrupt end. Chen Hua's body trembled slightly, and he immediately closed his eyes. The majestic, tender green light, like the light of life that gave birth to all things in the world, gently poured onto the four people. It penetrated their pores and penetrated deep into their bodies. An indescribable comfort instantly pervaded their souls. The unconscious Fan Jin, Lu Qian, and Chen Hua were fine. However, Lu Hui, who had the innate spiritual root, widened her bright and beautiful eyes in surprise. She felt like a dry desert that had suddenly received the nourishment of spring rain. Her whole body was absorbing the intoxicating vitality at a speed several times faster than Chen Hua and the other two. That feeling was too wonderful. It was so wonderful that she, Chen Hua, Lu Qian, and even the unconscious Fan Jin were deeply intoxicated and forgot all their troubles. Unfortunately, it was only a moment before the green light on Lu Hui, Lu Qian, and Chen Hua dissipated, leaving only the unconscious Fan Jin. However, even though they had only absorbed it for a moment, Lu Hui, Lu Qian, and Chen Hua felt as if they had been reborn. They were full of vigor and vitality, and a kind of comfort that they had never felt before appeared from within their hearts. Lu Hui and Lu Qian looked at Li Mubai, who was standing with a smile, with puzzlement and confusion. Then, they looked at Chen Hua, who was beside them, and finally at Fan Jin, who was still immersed in the green light. Fan Jin's red and swollen cheeks recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The dirty blood at the corner of her mouth evaporated like water. Suddenly, Fan Jin let out a groan. Then, she opened her eyes abruptly and said with horror, "Hubby, you can't say it." As she opened her mouth to speak, Lu Hui and Lu Qian opened their small mouths in surprise. Her teeth were actually intact. Chen Hua was so emotional that he pulled Fan Jin into his arms. "Jinjin, it's okay. It's okay." Professor Chen. Li Mubai suddenly interrupted Chen Hua. Lu Qian and Lu Hui asked in confusion. Chen Hua looked at Lu Hui and Lu Qian, who were still looking at him nervously and worriedly. Chen Hua was still very touched and grateful for their performance just now. Although it didn't work, The two of them had completely gained Xinhua's approval. After a slight hesitation, he said, "This matter, it's a long story. I'll tell you briefly. At your age, you might still remember that 10 years ago, the entire Sky River sector often had terrifying natural disasters, causing dozens of planets with life to become history and cease to exist. Countless humans also died in that terrifying natural disasters." "I remember, Professor. Are you saying that the natural disasters were caused by that demon?" The clever Lu Hui immediately asked. "That's right. The so-called natural disasters were actually the invasion of our Sky River sector by extraterrestrial life forms. Back then, the entire Sky River sector coalition army was mobilized to kill and capture the extraterrestrial life forms that appeared. And that was because the extraterrestrial life forms had exhausted their energy and couldn't recover in the Sky River sector. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to suppress them at all." Li Mubai looked at Lu Hui and said, "A few days ago, the military alliance finally made a breakthrough in the interrogation of the extraterrestrial life forms, but the news they brought back was..." Qianhua briefly told the whole story to Lu Hui and Lu Qian. However, Qianhua didn't say anything about Qinhao. Including the matter of immortal fate, it was all based on the pretense of Planet 2046. "Professor, how did that demon disappear?" "I don't know. Let's take it one step at a time. Well, let's go to the inner cabin first." After Qianhua finished speaking, he glanced at Qinhao, who was sleeping and didn't move at all, and opened the inner cabin door of the warship. The young nurses, Lu Hui and Lu Qian, saw Qinhua's appearance. Although they still felt that there were many things that they didn't understand, they didn't ask anymore. At the same time, they pushed Qinhao into the inner cabin. At this time, Lu Hui and Lu Qian were surprised and delighted to find that Qinhao's lips opened and closed slightly again, returning to his original appearance. "But I want my mother." "Auntie, you said it. Why isn't my father here yet?" As soon as the inner cabin door opened, a voice came out. Lu Kai, who was pregnant with Qinhao's flesh and blood and insisted on not agreeing to the fetal transplant operation, came in first. She was accompanying 6 little guys who looked like an equal number. There were also several young girls who were respectfully helping to take care of the children. However, these young girls looked exactly the same, but their expressions lacked a touch of liveliness. They were the extraterrestrials born in the Sky River sector. They were also the service staff of Qinhua's private warship. "Professor, madam." When they saw Qinhua and the others come in, Lu Kai and the other extraterrestrials present immediately saluted respectfully. Lu Kai lowered her head shyly, and her eyes couldn't help but secretly look at the sleeping Qinhao. "Are you my father?" A little boy who was the oldest, but was only about 2 years old, looked at Qinhua, who was walking at the front. He was full of curiosity as he looked at Qinhua, who was walking at the front, and spoke clearly with a childish voice. He looked extremely cute, especially his pair of dark eyes, which gave off a very lively feeling. This little guy was Qinhao's second life. When he was 15 years old, he was a virgin, and the first shot, or the nth shot, a little life was born. "I'm your grandfather. The one sleeping is your father." Qinhua was slightly stunned, and a trace of gentleness flashed in his eyes. Fan Zhen leaned over and picked up the little boy, saying, "Come, Grandma will carry you to see your father." "Is he my father? I finally see my father. Why is he still sleeping? The sun is shining on his butt, so naughty. Mom will scold him if she sees him like this. Little lazy worm, get up quickly." The little fellow used his tender little hands to push Qinhao's face. His expression and tone made him look extremely adorable. Chapter 929. However, Fan Zhen and Qinhua's expressions darkened slightly. The childish voice and the words he said made the two of them faintly feel strange. This child was already sensible, although he was only 2 years old. The other 2 or 3 little guys were still crying, and the youngest was still sleeping in the arms of the waiter. Looking at the little faces, Fan Zhen's heart was very uncomfortable. Although she had thought of this problem before, Because of the other party's identity and the consequences of the forced appearance, she and Xianxia rejected it from the bottom of their hearts. More importantly, the other party was already married and had a new family. Therefore, they only chose to take back their grandchildren. However, the child's words made Xianxia and Fan Zhen a little confused. Did he never have a father? Good boy, tell grandma your name. Fan Zhen touched the little guy's face and asked. In the past 10 years, she and Xianxia were so busy that they had very little time to watch their son's surveillance video. They were even less clear about the situation of these grandchildren who were accidentally born. The only thing they could do was ask the government to take care of them. My name is Chen Long, the dragon who wants his son to become a dragon. Mom said that only when I grow up and become a capable person can I see Dad. Pa. Now, I haven't grown up yet. Didn't I see Dad? Mom lied. So naughty. This is your biological father. You didn't have a father before? Xianxia gently grabbed the little guy's little hand and asked. Biological father? He doesn't even kiss Long. He even sleeps. The little guy didn't answer the question. Professor, madam. At this time, Lu suddenly shouted in a seemingly tangled manner. After a slight pause, she mustered up her courage and said, They won't have other men. Marriage is only a formality. The child's father will only be one. They are all waiting. What do you mean? Not only Xianxia and Fan Zhen were surprised and puzzled, but Lu Hui and Lu Qian were no exception. However, compared to Xianxia, Fan Zhen, and Lu Hui, Lu Qian was relatively less surprised. Just like Lu Hui once teased her about falling in love with a living dead person, she felt that if this kind of thing happened to her, maybe she would also wait. What she was surprised about was that Lu Kai had confidently said that the other 5 nurses would also wait. Wasn't this a bit too exaggerated? It was already inconceivable for 1 or 2 of them to completely fall into the hands of a living dead. Speaking of which, how could all of them fall into the hands of a living dead? How could she possibly have such great charm? The only one who was not surprised was the sleeping Qianhao. He was only touched. During these 3 years, the 6 nurses, including Lu Kai, had left one after another, but they had never left Qianhao's perception. Qianhao, who had a powerful perception, was very clear about their situation. He knew that the 6 of them did not interact with any other men besides him. Only he didn't know what was so special about him, a living dead, who didn't seem to have any hope of waking up, that they would be so loyal to him. Although he believed that he could wake up, they didn't know that. It was also because of this that he was especially moved. How could he repay such deep affection? How do you know? Xianxia and Fan Zhen asked almost at the same time. Because Lu Kai's face flushed red. She wanted to speak, but no matter how many people were present, especially in front of the professor, she couldn't say it. In the end, she walked directly to Fan Zhen's side, leaned close to her ear, and whispered in a very low voice. No one could hear it, but Fan Zhen looked at Qianhao in surprise. Her expression was obviously shining with excitement. She said, Are you telling the truth? Yes, madam. That feeling is very, very clear. It will appear every time. And only then will it appear. I believe that they should feel the same as me. Lu Kai said with a red face. Honey, Hao will wake up. He will definitely wake up. Even if we don't leave the Sky River sector, he will wake up. Fan Zhen said excitedly after receiving Lu Kai's affirmative answer. After seeing Qianhua's suspicious and puzzled expression, Fan Zhen whispered a few words in Qianhua's ear. Immediately, Qianhua was surprised at first, then nodded, as expected. Fan Zhen and the others didn't know, but at this moment, Qianhua thought to himself. In fact, when Lu Kai said that they would wait for Qianhao, he thought of a possibility. Perhaps all of this was done by the real Qianhao for the other him, his son. This vague and indistinct, there is an image in it. Vague and indistinct, there is something in it. Indistinct and indistinct, there is essence in it. Endless laws of Tao rolled, and a magnificent sound of Tao resounded through the heaven and earth. Dense and pure natural energy filled the entire space. Chen Hao sat cross-legged under a towering tree that seemed to connect the 9 heavens and 10 earths. This was Chen Hao's mental world. It was Chen Hao's real body, not the manifestation of his divine will. This was, without a doubt, an inconceivable matter. It should be known that even Hongmeng Supreme, who possessed the great world in his mind, could allow any cultivator to enter his great world. However, he could not allow his true body to enter. This was because the great world in the mind of the real body. This was something that defied common sense. Who could do it? However, Chen Hao, who had obtained the 9 lives secret art of the Shao clan ancestor, had done it. The great world in the mind of the second life, while the real body entered the great world in the mind. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Chen Hao to cultivate normally in the Sky River sector, where the natural energy of heaven and earth was extinct. Of course, this was also because Chen Hao's great world in his mind was very abnormal. There was a vast and boundless spirit spring sea, as well as a huge amount of spiritual items of heaven and earth obtained in the primitive secret realm. Just the Emperor Chalcedony raw or reserves alone were enough for Daoist Jinxian's Chen Hao to cultivate for more than 10,000 years. Not to mention the other spiritual items of heaven and earth. Chen Hao's real body was completely naked. His spiritual altar was resplendent, and his physical body was covered with mysterious runes that emitted endless immortal light. Just the aura emitted by his physical body alone was enough to make a peak expert like Daoist Jinxian feel weak in the knees. Not to mention the pressure emitted by his spiritual altar, which far exceeded his cultivation level. Even stranger and more terrifying was the fact that Chen Hao's spiritual altar was emitting essence, qi, and spirit. The void above his head seemed to have condensed into a mirror world. At every moment, human figures flickered, and tens of thousands of rays of sacred light fell, like the Milky Way of the 9 heavens. This was the pure power of faith that connected the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and transcended the laws of space and time. "Kill me, I beg you, just kill me." Li Mubai, who had disappeared from the sight of Chen Hua and the others, was now madly absorbing the natural energy of heaven and earth in the vast spirit spring sea. He was motionless. However, in his soul palace, Li Mubai, who only had his soul imprint left, was suffering from all kinds of terrifying illusions. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. If Hu Mainyang, with her innate Tao embryo, was here, she would definitely be shocked. The 10th level of the Red Dust Heart Sutra. The chances of him coming alone were very high. After all, the immortal fate that they believed to be was a fatal temptation to any cultivator. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. Otherwise, it would just be making things difficult for him. However, he could not rule out the possibility that he would bring along some of his disciples. Of course, this was not important. The only ones who could really threaten Chen Hao were the Supreme of Hongmeng. The important thing was whether there were any cultivators who had the same idea as Li Mubai among the remaining dozens of cultivators. If those guys all sent back a wisp of their primordial spirit like Li Mubai, then there would be dozens of Supreme of Hongmeng. No matter how strong Chen Hao was, he could not resist. "Can you tell me what you're going to do? Have you settled the matter of not letting the military take action?" Chen Hao asked rhetorically. "I've already sent a message to the military, informing them that more powerful extraterrestrial beings will come. They will inevitably choose to compromise for the time being and prepare to withdraw from the deployment of the Sky River sector. There won't be any problems?" Chen Hua asked. "That's good. When I've settled these people, I'll be able to confirm the specific arrangements." "I can't be sure yet," Chen Hao said. How, can I call you that?" "Of course. As I said, your son is me. I'm also your son, your father?" "Okay. How? Then I'll talk to you as your father. I want to know what you're going to do when all kinds of possible situations arise. First of all, if all of them send back messages like Li Mubai did, more and more powerful extraterrestrial beings will come to the Sky River sector. What should we do then? Second, if no one else sends back a message, what will you do? Third, If the number of people who send back a message reaches a critical point, what will you do? In each case, what would you do if something unexpected happened and caused you to fail? How? Don't blame me for being nosy. I know your power is not something I can measure, but this concerns the life and death of billions of lives in the Sky River sector. I need to know everything and make my own judgment. Also, the technological power of the Sky River sector may be useful. No matter what, we just want to live. We don't want to be enslaved. Ahem. Father, your question is a little difficult for me. First, I don't know what level my power has reached. There are not many people who can give me a reference. In your scientific words, I've made a breakthrough, but I still need to test my real combat power. But so far, I haven't met anyone who can test my real combat power. Second, we only know how strong the other party is. They're stronger than Li Mubai and the others, but we can't tell how strong they are. It's normal for cultivators to have different combat power at the same level. Take Li Mubai, for example. He's 2 levels higher than me, but I can easily kill him. This is related to one's talent. So, I can't estimate the critical point you mentioned. However, I can answer you this way. If I can fight against them, then there's no problem. If I can't, then I'll have to choose to escape. You didn't say anything. To prepare for a rainy day, you have to make arrangements in advance. What you said can only be confirmed when the battle breaks out. By then it may be too late. Chen Hua said in his mind. There's no hurry. More powerful extraterrestrial life forms can't come for the time being. As for now, they can't threaten me at all. After dealing with them, I can send all the natural and semi-natural people in the Sky River sector to a safe world. There's no problem in guaranteeing your safety. Now, you just need to send me to planet 2046. Send you or send my how? Your how or is me? Well, I'm the unconscious me, which is what they call immortal fate. Will it be dangerous? Hee, don't worry, Father. I'm not as great as you. I can save the world. But the premise is that I have the ability. If I don't have the ability, I won't do something that will send me to my death. Chen Hao said with a smile. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.